Chapter 896. In the face of Bruce Ling's plan, Sha Yelu disagreed. At this time, apart from Bruce Ling, the three great demon ancestors were gathered together. Sha Yelu did not hide the contempt in his heart and directly refused. Targeting ordinary humans who had no ability to resist was definitely not something a demon warrior should do. When he was in the northern demon continent, Bruce Ling was known for his insidious cunning. However, at that time, because everyone was trapped in the northern demon continent, Sha Yelu was too lazy to care about him. He just despised him from the bottom of his heart. But now, in the war between the demon race and the human race, Bruce Ling actually wanted to attack ordinary humans who had no cultivation base. This directly touched Sha Yelu's bottom line. In Sha Yelu's heart, Bruce Ling's actions were a disgrace to the demon race. As natural warriors, how could the demon race do such a thing? If after defeating the elite army of a human race and completely occupying the Sky River continent, Sha Yelu would never say anything if Bruce Ling wanted to slaughter those humans who had no cultivation base. After all, if the human race was defeated, then they would naturally become the spoils of war of the demon race. They could only be disposed of by the demon race. At that time, they would be killed. Looking at the situation now, the two armies were still fighting. If Bruce Ling wanted to attack ordinary humans as a way to win, Sha Yelu would never agree. Hearing Sha Yelu's firm opposition, the other two demon ancestors also nodded in agreement. In the hearts of the demon race, as long as one was a warrior, whether it was a human or a demon, they should at least be respected, including their family. In the hearts of the demon race, a warrior should only die on the battlefield. Similarly, the opponent of a warrior should also be a warrior. The demon race was naturally warlike, but they did not have a strong character. The demon race worshipped the strong and despised the weak. This could be clearly seen from the wars launched by the demon race throughout history, because there has never been a time when the demon race declared war on those weak races. Looking at the war of the demon race, every time it was against a powerful race. The human race, the god race, the beast race, these big races have all fought with the demon race, and more than once. But except for these big races, the rest of the weak races have almost never been attacked by the demon race. The reason was very simple. They were too weak, and the demon race looked down on them. The demon race waged war not because they wanted to rule, but because they were naturally warlike. The three ancestors didn't agree with Bruce Ling's plan. In their opinion, with the strength of the demon clan, they could defeat the human clan even in a head-on battle. There was no need for them to do such a despicable thing. The three ancestors all objected, but the problem was that Bulu Ling had already made up his mind to do so, and the demons of the Blue Tribe, except for Bulu Ling's orders, couldn't be commanded by the other three ancestors at all. In that case, if they wanted to stop Bulu Ling, the three patriarchs would have to join forces with him. In that case, it would not be a good thing for the devil race. Moreover, although the other two patriarchs did not agree with Bulu Ling's actions, they did not agree with the outbreak of internal strife in the demon clan. For the time being, there was really no good way to stop Bulu Ling. After some discussion, Sha Yelu finally left in a huff. When he returned to his residence and saw that Sha Maxiong, Sha Mo, and the other two brothers were all there, Sha Yelu snorted coldly. This Bulu Ling is simply humiliating the demon clan. How can the warriors of the demon clan slaughter those ants without any cultivation? Isn't that a disgrace? Seeing that Sha Yelu was so angry, the four brothers looked at each other and didn't know what to say. Then, it was Sha Mo who asked about the matter. After hearing that the three patriarchs didn't support Buling, but had no way to stop him, Sha Mo had an idea and said, "Patriarch, I do have a way to stop Buling. Oh, go ahead." Sha Yelu asked after hearing Sha Mo's words. "It's very simple. We just need to pass the news to the human clan. The human clan will take precautions in advance, and Buling's plan will naturally not succeed. I'm willing to make a trip to the human clan's Zhongtian encampment and inform the human clan about this." Sha Mo volunteered and planned to go to the human clan's Zhongtian encampment alone to inform the human clan about this. However, Sha Maxiong and the other two brothers' expressions changed drastically when they heard Sha Mo's words. As the eldest brother, Sha Maxiong immediately reprimanded him. This is simply nonsense. We are now in a period of war with the human clan. Fourth brother, aren't you going to the human clan's encampment alone? I don't agree. There was no room for discussion, and Sha Maxiong directly objected. Hearing that, Sha Yilu looked at Sha Mo with interest and smiled. Aren't you afraid that the human clan will kill you on the spot? How dare you go to the human clan's encampment alone? Sha Mo's suggestion was indeed the best method. Sha Yilu also admitted this point. However, Sha Yilu was more curious about where Sha Mo's confidence came from to dare to go to the human clan's Zhongtian encampment alone. He believed that he knew his descendant very well. Sha Mo was definitely not acting on impulse. He was completely confident that he could escape unscathed. However, Sha Yilu couldn't figure out why the human clan would let Sha Mo go. Not to mention Sha Mo. In the current situation, even if Sha Yilu went to the human clan's encampment alone, he probably wouldn't be able to return. Facing his old ancestors' curiosity, Sha Mo, he only smiled faintly and said, "Because I am a warrior, and there are also warriors in the human race. I believe that the warrior of the human race will not let me die in the Zhongtian camp like this. Therefore, on this trip, your child's life is absolutely safe." Sha Mo's confidence actually came from Xiao Chun. He knew that Xiao Chun wouldn't let him die in the Zhongtian encampment. This was the source of Sha Mo's confidence. Although they were opponents, the two of them had a feeling of mutual respect for each other. Since they valued each other so much, no matter if it was Sha Mo or Xiao Chun, they would naturally not let each other die so sullenly. A proud son of the heavens had to belong to a proud son of the heavens. Furthermore, Sha Mo didn't have any enmity towards the human clan. It could even be said that the human clan was indebted to him. There was no reason for the human clan to kill him. Hearing Sha Mo's words, Sha Maxiong and his brothers still didn't agree. However, Sha Yilu didn't say anything. After a long while, Sha Yilu finally spoke. "Have you thought it through? This trip is very dangerous, and you might not be able to return. Are you sure you can deal with the human clan?" "Yes, 100%. Hearing Sha Yilu's words, Sha Mo still replied confidently. "Good. This is the strongest devil son of my Sha tribe. Going into the tiger's den alone. Good, don't worry. If anything happens to you, the entire Sha tribe will avenge you. Even if we have to die together, I will definitely raise the Zhongtian encampment to the ground." Sha Yilu suddenly laughed out loud. Begging for collection, begging for monthly votes, begging for recommendations. End of chapter. Chapter 897. How much courage did it require to head to the human race's encampment alone? At the very least, Samohi's 3 elder brothers didn't dare to do so. Not only did Shailu not stop Samohi, but he also felt proud that his beloved descendant had the courage to do so. Shailu was gratified. The devil race was not a scheming race. What the devil race valued more was strength, and strength and courage were often directly proportional. A person without courage would not be able to become a powerhouse. Sha Yilu did not stop Sha Mo. Seeing this, Sha Maxiong and his brothers lowered their heads in shame. Compared to their younger brother, Sha Maxiong and his brothers were indeed weaker. No wonder their 4th brother was loved by the patriarch since young. It was not without reason. Sha Yilu patted Sha Mo's shoulder with a gratified expression and said, "My greatest pride in my life is to have a descendant like you. With you, my Sha clan will definitely rise to a higher level." In an instant, Shailu's frustration and anger were swept away. On the next morning, Samohi left the demon race's base camp under Shailu's personal escort and headed to the human race's encampment. Sha Mo didn't hide his whereabouts. On the contrary, he left under everyone's watchful eyes. Therefore, when Sha Mo left, Blueling received the news. For a moment, Blueling flew into a rage. He was so angry that he smashed many things in the house into pieces. Damn it! Damn it! This little devil of a Sha tribe ruined my plans. Damn it! Blueling cursed as he smashed the floor. Samohi left the demon race's base camp in public and didn't hide his destination. After knowing that Samohi was heading to the human race's encampment, Blueling knew what Samo was going to do, even if he used his but to think. Judging from Shailu's stance, what could Samo possibly do in the human race's encampment at this time? Samo must have lost the information in order to foil Blueling's plan and let the human race take precautions in advance. Blueling's furious outburst naturally attracted the attention of the other people in the courtyard. At this moment, the demon son of the Blue tribe, Broth, quickly walked into the hall. Seeing Blueling's ashen face, Broth consoled him. "Patriarch, please calm down. Samo doesn't know what's good for him. He actually went to the human race's encampment alone. I think he's dead for sure this time." "Patriarch, you don't have to be so angry over a dead person." Broth's original intention was to persuade Brulin, but who would have thought that not only would his words fail to appease Brulin's anger, but he would also be reprimanded by Brulin. "You still have the cheek to say that. You're both devil princes. Look at you and that little devil of the Shah tribe. You're just trash. He dared to go to the human race's encampment alone. What can you do? Do you dare? You've embarrassed me." Samo was nicknamed Little Devil in the Northern Devil Continent. At this moment, Blueling was in a fit of anger. When he saw Broof, he naturally couldn't help but compare him to Samo. The more he compared them, the more Blueling felt that his descendants were all trash. None of them could compare to that little devil of the Shah tribe. Although Samo had ruined his plan this time, just the fact that this little devil dared to go to the human race's encampment alone was enough to impress everyone. On the other hand, the devil princes of the Blue tribe were all extremely disappointing. Broof was also depressed about being scolded out of the hall by Blueling. However, he asked himself, would he dare to go to the human race's encampment alone like Samo? No, definitely not. This was the answer Broof found. Putting aside how angry Blueling was, Samo was rushing to the Zhongtian encampment alone. Because he was alone, his speed was naturally much faster than an army. In just 2 days, Samo entered the territory of the human race. However, when he was 200 miles away from the Zhongtian encampment, Samo encountered a patrol team of the human race. Led by a sage-to-be expert, the team of several hundred people surrounded Samo. This patrol team was made up of disciples of the ancient sacred sect. When they discovered that the demon race had invaded, they all looked as if they were facing a great enemy. However, at the same time, when they confirmed that Samo was alone, they were full of doubts. Was this demon race stupid? Alone, he dared to enter the territory of the human race, and it seemed that he was going straight to the Zhongtian encampment. Could it be that he wanted to attack the Zhongtian encampment alone? What a joke. Not to mention attacking the Zhongtian encampment, he probably couldn't even break through the outer encampment. Although he was surrounded by several hundred human race cultivators, Samo didn't show much nervousness on his face. He looked at the sage-to-be of the human race and said, "I'm alone. No need to be so nervous. I'm looking for Xiao Chun. Please inform him." Hearing Samo's words, the sage-to-be of the human race was completely dumbfounded. What did he mean? He came alone to look for the holy son, Xiao Chun? In the ancient sacred sect, everyone had already privately acknowledged Xiao Chun as the holy son, although Xiao Chun didn't admit it. Puzzled, the sage-to-be pondered for a moment and said, "If you want the holy son Xiao Chun, come back with us. We'll make a decision after we report to Xiao Chun." Samo had come alone, so the sage-to-be didn't think that he could do anything. However, since he wanted to look for the holy son Xiao Chun, he naturally had to report it. However, before that, Samo had to be detained and guarded. Samo wasn't surprised by the sage-to-be's reply. It was already good enough that he didn't attack directly. Therefore, he didn't resist and willingly allowed himself to be detained by the patrol team. He was directly brought to a camp near the Zhongtian encampment. Strict guards were arranged to guard Samo. Soon after, the person in charge of the camp also reported this matter back to the Zhongtian encampment. Through the voice transmission talisman, this matter quickly reached the ears of the human race saints in the Zhongtian encampment. After hearing this, the saints were all curious. However, there were also some saints who suggested to ignore him and just kill him. However, the Tianfeng saint and the others had a different opinion. After all, the fact that the demon race dared to come alone was already impressive. Moreover, he specifically said that he was looking for Xiao Chun. No matter what, he should at least inform Xiao Chun. The saints had different opinions, but it wasn't a big deal. Therefore, they quickly came to a compromise and agreed to inform Xiao Chun first. They would wait for Samohi's purpose before making a final decision. Begging for your collection, begging for monthly votes, begging for recommendations. End of chapter. Chapter 898. Although Sha Mo's arrival was puzzling, he wasn't a threat in general. He was just one person, not to mention the demon's son. Even if the demon ancestor came, the Zhongtian station was confident in stopping him. Therefore, the saints weren't too nervous about Sha Mo. It was precisely because he wasn't a threat that the human race saints wanted to see what Sha Mo was up to. Was he here to die? Soon, Xiao Chun arrived at the Tianfeng saint's residence under the summons of the Tianfeng saint. Here, Xiao Chun not only saw the Tianfeng saint, but also the other saints of the Zhongtian station. Xiao Chun cupped his hands and bowed to the saints, then asked, "Saints, is there anything I can help you with?" "There's something, and it's related to you," the Tianfeng saint said with a smile. "Huh? What's the matter?" Xiao Chun asked. "Do you know that there's a Sha Mo in the demon race?" the Tianfeng saint asked. Yes. Xiao Chun didn't know what the Tianfeng saint meant, but he still answered truthfully. Xiao Chun still remembered Sha Mo from the battle that day. After all, he was the first opponent that he acknowledged in the truest sense of the word. He couldn't forget him even if he wanted to. Seeing Xiao Chun admit it, the Tianfeng saint smiled and told Xiao Chun the whole story. "Since you know him, it's easy. Earlier today, Sha Mo entered the territory of the human race alone and was caught by the patrol team. He's now imprisoned in the 4th camp. Sha Mo came alone this time and said that he's looking for you." Sha Mo came to the Zhongtian station alone? Hearing this, Xiao Chun was stunned. Wasn't this like the god of longevity hanging himself? Was he courting death? He didn't think that Sha Mo was a brainless person. Puzzled, Xiao Chun immediately said, "In that case, I'll go and see him." Although he was facing several saints at this time, Xiao Chun wasn't too nervous and said directly. This was Xiao Chun. If it were anyone else, they wouldn't dare to say that. A demon race came to find you for no reason, and you still wanted to meet him. This would easily make people suspect that you were in cahoots with the demon race. However, Xiao Chun didn't care about this. In Xiao Chun's opinion, since Sha Mo dared to come to the Zhongtian station alone to find him, no matter what, he had to meet him. As for other things, Xiao Chun didn't care at all. He didn't have the slightest concern. Sure enough, hearing Xiao Chun's words, Tianfeng's saint and the others laughed. "You brat, I already guessed that this Sha Mo is not an ordinary demon, right? He is the son of the devil clan. He is very powerful," Xiao Chun answered honestly. "The devil's son of the devil race? Bingo. Since he wants to see you, we naturally can't refuse," Saint said. From Xiao Chun's words, the saints felt that there was something else between the two of them besides being enemies. How to put it, it was a feeling of mutual sympathy. They weren't worried about Xiao Chun going to capture Sha Mo. After all, Sha Mo was under the close surveillance of many human race cultivators. There was no possibility of him escaping. Hearing that Sha Mo was imprisoned in the 4th camp, Xiao Chun immediately rushed to the 4th camp. At the same time, in the 4th camp, Sha Mo didn't look like a prisoner at all. Although he was imprisoned in an iron prison, he was drinking wine with a satisfied expression. These fine wines were naturally requested from the person in charge of the 4th camp. The person in charge didn't refuse Sha Mo's request because the saints had already replied that as long as Sha Mo didn't do anything strange, they would treat him with good food and wine. Inside the dark iron prison, Sha Mo sat down. There were 2 dishes in front of him, as well as a large jar of wine. He poured himself a bowl and gulped it down in one gulp. Sha Mo didn't care about anything else. He used his arm to wipe the wine stain on his mouth and laughed. "Ah, not bad, not bad. Although it's much milder than the wine of our demon race. It has its own charm. Haha, great." Just as Sha Mo finished speaking, the iron prison's door opened. A ray of light shone in, followed by the same hearty laughter. Do you demon race also know about the wine of the human race? As the voice rang out, a figure dressed in long white robes strode out of the cell. It was none other than Xiao Chun, who had rushed over from the Zhongtian encampment, looking travel-worn and weary. Without any delay, Xiao Chun came to see Sha Mo as soon as he arrived at the fourth camp. At the same time, there were two human half-saints behind Xiao Chun. They were the people in charge of the fourth camp, and the half-saint deacons of the ancient saint sect. Therefore, in front of Xiao Chun, the two half-saints were very respectful. Sha Mo wasn't surprised to see Xiao Chun. His smile didn't diminish. Xiao Chun, I've been waiting for you for a long time. Since you're here, come in and have a drink. As long as you don't think this place is too shabby. It's nothing. Open the door, Xiao Chun said with a smile. Then he ordered a half-saint behind him to open the iron prison's door. However, after hearing Xiao Chun's words, the half-saint hesitated. Sha Mo was a demon race. What if he suddenly attacked when the door was opened? He looked at Xiao Chun with some difficulty. Holy Son Xiao Chun. He's a demon race, so what? I'm here, aren't I? Open the door and get the rest of you out of here, Xiao Chun said without a care in the world. Xiao Chun insisted. Seeing this, the half-saint could only obediently open the door. Then Xiao Chun strode in. The human cultivators guarding outside the iron prison also left. In the end, even the two half-saints left the cell helplessly. Only Xiao Chun and Sha Mo were left sitting opposite each other. Sha Mo personally poured a bowl of wine for Xiao Chun. He raised his cup and said with a smile, Xiao Chun, I didn't expect to meet you so soon. Last time it was a great battle. Come, let's decide the victor on the table today. I also did not expect that we would meet again so soon. However, this time, you dared to come to my Zhongtian camp alone. Aren't you afraid that you will be stuck here forever? Hearing this, Xiao Chun also raised his cup and asked with a smile. When he heard Xiao Chun's words, Sha Mo's face didn't have the slightest trace of pretentiousness. There was only a carefree smile on his face, as if the Zhongtian base was his back garden and not some dragon's den. Sha Mo laughed loudly and said, The world is vast. Where can I, Sha Mo, not go? It's just a Zhongtian base. Why can't I come? Ha! As he spoke, Sha Mo drank the wine in his bowl. Looking at his expression, he didn't seem to be faking it. He really wasn't afraid. Seeing this, Xiao Chun also laughed and drank his cup in one gulp. Begging for collection, begging for monthly votes, begging for recommendations. End of chapter. Chapter 899. The world is vast. There's no place that I, Sha Mo, cannot go. Just this sentence vividly reflected the arrogance in Sha Mo's heart. Sha Mo dared to go to the Zhongtian camp alone when the two armies were at war. This already showed his courage. In the dark cage, Sha Mo and Xiao Chun drank to their heart's content. The human race and the demon race were actually sitting together and drinking. This scene was indeed a bit strange, especially at such a time. However, from the smiles on their faces, they seemed to have been good friends for many years. This did not seem to be fake at all. It had to be said that the two were proud sons of heaven, and their temperaments and characters were very compatible. Sha Mo was arrogant, and Xiao Chun was also arrogant. There were not many people who could meet their eyes. For example, Xiao Chun. In fact, there were many holy sons of the Tiana continent that Xiao Chun looked down on. Or rather, the holy son of the heavenly sage sect, Han Mang, and the former holy maiden of the sacred Yin sect, Yun Wan, and so on. Xiao Chun simply looked down on them. Even if they were holy sons, so what? It was rare to meet a person with a similar temperament and character. Although they belonged to different camps and were enemies, whether it was Xiao Chun or Sha Mo, they both felt that 1,000 cups of wine were not enough when drinking with a bosom friend. They drank from the evening to the early morning of the next day. At this time, the wine was finished. Xiao Chun stood up and said, The wine is finished, you can go. Indeed, he had no intention of killing Sha Mo. Although now, as long as Xiao Chun gave the order, the human race cultivators in the fourth camp would immediately attack and chop Sha Mo to death. However, Xiao Chun would not do so, because Xiao Chun had his own pride. After drinking for a night, Xiao Chun did not ask Sha Mo's purpose. Until now, Xiao Chun did not say much and directly let Sha Mo go. Hearing this, Sha Mo smiled and replied, "What? Will the human race saints agree to let me go just like that? There's no need to agree or disagree. A person like you shouldn't die here," Xiao Chun replied with a chuckle. Sha Mo was the devil's son, a monster, and a genius. Just as Xiao Chun had said, he should not die here. Hearing that, Sha Mo smiled. Haha, I never thought that I would die here either. However, before I leave, I want to make a trip to the Zhongtian camp. Shouldn't you lead the way for me? They still had to go to the Zhongtian encampment. Upon hearing this, Xiao Chun stared at Sha Mo for a moment, before nodding his head and agreeing without asking any questions. He did not know why Sha Mo he was going to the culmination encampment, but he definitely had his own reasons. Immediately, the two of them walked out of the metal prison one after the other. The human clan warriors who had been guarding not far away also appeared when they saw that Xiao Chun had actually brought Sha Mo he out of the iron prison. Seeing this, Xiao Chun waved his hand and said, "I'll bring him to the Zhongtian encampment. The rest of you can disperse and do what you need to do." Without the slightest bit of worry that Sha Mo he would do anything out of the ordinary, Xiao Chun and Sha Mo he did not wait for the others to reply as they directly disappeared from the spot, rushing toward the Zhongtian encampment. The distance from the fourth camp to the Zhongtian encampment was not far, so the two of them quickly arrived. However, outside the Zhongtian encampment, a saint had obviously received the news long ago. At this moment, a saint was already waiting there. When he saw Xiao Chun and Sha Mo he arrive, the saint looked at Sha Mo he and said indifferently, "What a fearless demon clan member, daring to come to my Zhongtian encampment alone. Interesting." There was a trace of killing intent in his words, but Sha Mo he did not care. He smiled faintly and said, "Human race saint, I'm naturally not here to die. However, from the looks of it, you all seem to be very afraid of me. Can I alone cause an entire encampment of humans to panic? If that's the case, then it's my honor." Sha Mo he's words were clearly filled with disdain. However, the saint expert was not angered by this. Instead, he laughed out loud. "People are in a panic? You're thinking too much. Let's go. Didn't you have something to do? Follow me to the Great Hall. Us old fellows are very curious about you." A mere demon's son naturally could not cause the people of the Zhongtian encampment to panic. If that was the case, then there was no need for the human race to fight this war. Therefore, there were no changes to the Zhongtian encampment because of Sha Mo he's arrival. Everyone continued to do what they were supposed to do. However, in the Great Hall, the various saints, Qinyu, Emperor Qing, and the other two saints had already gathered together, waiting to see this audacious demon son. Soon, under the lead of the saint, the three of them entered the Great Hall. The Tianfeng saint was already waiting in the spacious Great Hall. At the same time, Emperor Qing and Chun were also present. Moreover, there was an empty chair beside Emperor Qing. Clearly, it was reserved for Xiao Chun. Although Xiao Chun was not a true saint of the ancient sacred sect, his treatment was already no different from that of a saint. His status was also on the same level as a saint. Xiao Chun did not stand on ceremony. He directly went to his seat and sat down. Then, he did not care about the saints present and said naturally, "Come, give Sha Mo he a seat of honor." Following Xiao Chen's words, a human half-saint carried a chair and placed it in the center of the Great Hall. Sha Mo he was not afraid and directly sat down. Sitting in the center of the Great Hall, Sha Mo he glanced at the saints present. Of course, there were only 6 saints present. Not all of them were present. However, it did not matter. Sha Mo he then continued, "I'm here for 2 things. First, I'm looking for Xiao Chun. We already had a drink last night. It was very enjoyable. Second, I'm here to tell you something. An ancestor of the demon race is planning to break through the seal of the sacred incontinent and launch a sneak attack on the rear of the human race." Without the slightest hesitation or concealment, Sha Mo directly stated his intentions. Upon hearing his words, the saints on the main seats lowered their voices slightly. Then, one of the saints said coldly, Your demon race wants to launch a sneak attack on the rear of the human race. As a member of the demon race, you're here to inform us. What's the meaning of this? You want to surrender to the human race? Surrender? Haha, you're thinking too much. The reason why I'm here is because the demon race will not do such a thing. Why would the brave warriors of the demon race kill ants in exchange for victory? Since we're going to win, the demon race will naturally win fair and square. We'll have a head-on battle with the human race. Since I've said so, you can decide for yourselves. How you want to deal with this is your business. Sha Mo laughed loudly. His appearance was extremely insolent and overbearing. He had not come to surrender, but because of the arrogance of the devil race. The devil race did not need such despicable means in exchange for victory, so he had come, begging for collection, begging for monthly votes, begging for recommendations. End of chapter. Chapter 900. Sha Mo's laughter reverberated throughout the Great Hall. In the encampment of the human race, Sha Mo showed no signs of fear in the face of the 6 human race saints, Xiao Chun and the other chosen. Xiao Chun smiled when he heard this. This demon was indeed to his liking. At the same time, the Tianfeng saint, who was one of the 6 saints, also spoke with a smile. What a fair and square battle. Interesting. Sha Mo's performance was indeed extraordinary. Everyone present nodded in approval. Although he was an enemy, such a person was still impressive even if he was an enemy. From the moment he entered the Great Hall until now, Sha Mo's performance was neither servile nor overbearing. As the Tianfeng saint spoke, another human race saint spoke up. All right, you may leave. None of them had any intention of attacking Sha Mo. The saints chose to let him go. As for the reason, it was very simple. Since Sha Mo dared to come to the Zhongtian camp alone, the Zhongtian camp naturally dared to let him go. Sha Mo's courage was admirable, so the saints let him go. Sha Mo was not surprised when he heard this. After all, the human race was one of the strongest races in this world. It was impossible for them not to have such confidence. Since Sha Mo dared to enter the Zhongtian encampment openly, the human race naturally would not make things difficult for him. No one had any objections to the saint's words. Sha Mo then left. Of course, Xiao Chun took the initiative to send him off. However, to Xiao Chun's surprise, the Qing Emperor actually followed along with Chun Yu. After Xiao Chun and the other 2 left with Sha Mo, only the Tianfeng saint and the other saints were left in the Great Hall. The Tianfeng saint spoke up. Report this news and let the patriarchs make a decision personally. At the same time, strengthen the defenses. The human race naturally had to make some preparations after receiving the news that the demon race was planning to launch a sneak attack on the human race. The other 5 saints had no objections. After nodding, one of them spoke up. This demon race's demon son is interesting. I wonder if our holy son can compare to him. Haha, you're worrying too much. Although the demon son is strong, our holy son is no pushover either. This Sha Mo, he is indeed extraordinary. I don't dare to speak about others, but I don't think that Xiao Chun is inferior to him. Another saint said with a smile. Sha Mo, he dared to come alone, which was indeed impressive, but in the eyes of the saints, Xiao Chun was not inferior to him, whether it was talent, strength, or courage. Xiao Chun was not inferior to Sha Mo. Of course, the reason why the saints valued Xiao Chun so much was entirely because of Xiao Chun's experiences. From the moment Xiao Chun was born, the process of his growth was indeed amazing. At the very least, Xiao Chun's growth could be said to be legendary. No other holy son could compare to him. It was also because of his age. Otherwise, if Xiao Chun was given more time, he would definitely become the second Xiao Sheng and become the leader of this era, suppressing all the holy sons and holy daughters of the same generation. He did not know that the saints were comparing him to Sha Mo. At this moment, Xiao Chun and Sha Mo, he walked out of the Great Hall side by side. At the same time, the Qing Emperor also walked up quickly. His target was not Xiao Chun, but Sha Mo. His face was still indifferent, but there was an invisible, domineering aura. The Qing Emperor looked at Sha Mo and said indifferently, "You're not bad. The next time we meet, I'd like to have a battle with you. The Qing emperor obviously had a new level of respect for Shah Mo-he. However, Shah Mo-he's reply was unexpected. Shah Mo-he smiled and said, "Forget it. I'm not that interested in you. If you want to fight, look for my 3 brothers. Their cultivation levels are higher than mine, so they're more suitable for you." Indeed, he was not the slightest bit interested in the Qing emperor. Although the Qing emperor was not an ordinary person, he was still a little lacking in Shah Mo-he's eyes. Moreover, since there was already an opponent like Shao Chun, why would Shah Mo-he choose the Qing emperor? In fact, Shah Mo-he did not say that the Qing emperor's talent was not good enough. Although the Qing emperor's cultivation level was temporarily higher than his and Shao Chen's, in Shah Mo-he's opinion, the Qing emperor was not worthy of his attention. In other words, the Qing emperor was only worthy of competing with his 3 brothers. As for him, he naturally belonged to Shao Chun. After saying that, Shah Mo-he glanced at Chunyu, who was not far away. Then, he left the Zhongtian camp with Shao Chun. After the 2 of them left, Chunyu walked over with a smile and patted the Azure Supreme Emperor's shoulder, saying, "The Azure Supreme Emperor has been underestimated." "Haha, junior brother, this Shah Mo-he originally belonged to Shao Chun. Why do you have to think about it? Moreover, your cultivation level is higher than his. Aren't you bullying him?" Chunyu's words were obviously meant to comfort the Qing emperor. However, the Qing emperor was not a fool. Hearing Chunyu's words, the Qing emperor said indifferently, "Am I really not as good as Shao Chun?" It was as if he was asking himself. After saying that, the Qing emperor did not wait for Chunyu's reply and left. Looking at the Qing emperor's back, Chunyu smiled bitterly. This guy was still brooding. Actually, regarding the matter of Shao Chun, it was not only the Qing emperor. The other 2 saints of the ancient sacred sect, Hu Fei and Jiangyu, were also the same. In the beginning, these saints did not put Shao Chun in their eyes. However, they did not know when Shao Chun had quietly caught up with their footsteps. When they finally began to take Shao Chun seriously, they realized that Shao Chun had become an existence that could not be ignored. Although Shao Chun's cultivation level was not as high as them, they knew that it was only a matter of time. After the Qing emperor left, Chunyu also left. Shao Chun continued to send Shah Mo-he to the demon race's territory. The 2 of them stood proudly in the sky, facing each other. Looking at Shah Mo-he, Shao Chun smiled and said, "Let's meet again on the battlefield. Next time, I will definitely compete with you." Hearing this, Shah Mo-he also smiled and replied. After saying that, the 2 of them bid farewell. Shah Mo-he returned to the demon race's base camp, and Shao Chun also returned to the Zhongtian encampment. This time, Shah Mo-he's arrival made the 2 of them feel like heroes cherishing each other. They agreed to meet again on the battlefield to complete the unfinished battle. On the way back to the Zhongtian encampment, the 4 great demon ancestors of the demon race had gathered in the demon race's base camp. However, this time, it was Bruce Ling who had gathered them. After gathering the other 3 patriarchs of the demon race and sitting in a circle in the hall, Bruce Ling said with a gloomy expression, "Shailu, are you satisfied now? Begging for collection, begging for monthly votes, begging for recommendations." In a chapter. Chapter 901. Today, he gathered the 4 great ancestors of the demon race together to announce that he had given up on the plan to attack the human race's rear. Of course, this was definitely not because of Bluing's resources, but because he had no other choice. Sha Mo had gone to the Zhongtian encampment, and the human race had also made a deployment immediately. According to the news Bluing received, the human race had fully strengthened the blockade of the Sacredine province. Judging from the current actions of the human race, it was no longer possible to use a small force to attack the human race's rear. And it was precisely because of this news that Bluing's last remaining hope was shattered. He knew that this plan was impossible to succeed, so he could only choose to give up. After giving up the plan to attack the human race's rear, Bluing's anger could not be extinguished, and he shouted coldly at Sha Yelu. However, Sha Yelu did not care too much about this and replied indifferently. Blue Spirit, war is war. It's a direct confrontation of strength. Your plots and tricks are completely useless and meaningless in the face of war. Do you think you can make the human race panic by attacking the human race's rear? Let me tell you, not only will you not defeat the human race by doing this, but you will only make the human race even crazier. Moreover, our demon race does not need such a victory. Tactics could be used in war, but tactics did not mean schemes and tricks because they were simply useless. If schemes and tricks were useful, then there was no need to fight. Once you put your scheme to use, the other party would surrender. Hearing Sha Yelu's answer, Bluing was furious, but he did not say anything more. His plan could be said to have been opposed by everyone, and it would not be worth it to forcefully continue. As Sha Yelu's voice fell, the other two great ancestors also spoke one after another. In the end, the four great ancestors of the demon race decided to fight the human race fair and square. They no longer thought about those unpresentable schemes and tricks. Just as the demon race was preparing to launch an all-out attack on the human race, on the other side, the human race was also planning a real battle with the demon race. The demon clan wanted to occupy the Tiana continent, while the human clan wanted to repel the demon clan. At the same time, they wanted to find a way to destroy the spatial passage between the Tiana continent and the northern demon continent, which was the Blood Gate. Only by completely destroying the Blood Gate could this crisis be resolved. However, in order to destroy the Blood Gate, the first thing to do was to defeat the demons that had already arrived in the Tiana continent. Only by defeating them could the human race pass through the Blood Gate to the northern demon continent and destroy the Blood Gate in one fell swoop. They had to destroy the two nodes of the Blood Gate in order to completely destroy it. Therefore, the human race had to think of a way to invade the northern demon continent. It had been several months since the start of the war, and both sides had come into contact with each other many times. Of course, if one were to talk about the largest scale battle, it would still be the one at the Zhongtian camp. But soon, the curtains of an unprecedented scale of war gradually opened. After receiving intelligence, the Demon Clan's army began to advance towards the plains in the east of the Sacredine continent. This time, the Demon Clan had truly gathered an army of 3 million, and they had no intention of hiding their whereabouts. Their goal was very obvious. They wanted to have a decisive battle with the human race on the plains in the east of the Sacredine continent. The 3 million Demon Clan's army advanced in a grandiose manner. Moreover, according to the intelligence, the Demon Clan's old ancestor had appeared this time. In other words, the old ancestors of both sides would most likely participate in this battle. Their target was still the Zhongtian camp, but this time the Demon Clan did not deliberately mystify them, but openly forced the human race into a decisive battle. As for why they chose the Zhongtian camp, the reason was still the terrain. In the plains, it was easier for both sides to erupt with their strongest battle strength. At the same time, in a war between millions of people, the plains were the best place to display their strength. The Demon Clan's momentum was very aggressive, and at the same time, the human race also began to continuously increase the number of troops in the Zhongtian camp. Unknowingly, the Zhongtian camp had become a breakthrough point for both sides. The Demon Clan wanted to break through the Zhongtian camp, while the human race wanted to defend it with their lives. As such, the Zhongtian camp became the focal point of the entire war. Regarding such a situation, Randang Kozii and the others had already expected it long before the war began. The Zhongtian camp's location was unique, easy to attack, but difficult to defend. It was surrounded by endless plains, and there was no place to defend. Once the Demon Clan launched their attack, they would definitely target the Zhongtian camp first. The eastern plains of the Sacredine continent were originally not suitable for defense, but there was no other way. If the human race wanted to seal off the Sacredine continent, they would need to build a Zhongtian camp here, and at the same time, defend it. Otherwise, once the Zhongtian camp was breached, the human race's entire blockade line would be torn apart. At that time, the Demon Clan would be able to openly invade the other 3 great prefectures from the eastern plains, and the consequences would be unimaginable. The human armies of the other 5 camps continued to rush towards the Zhongtian camp, and as time passed, the Zhongtian camp became more and more rowdy. Originally, there were only 1 million people stationed there, but now there are more than 3 million people stationed there, and there are still more reinforcements rushing over. The camp was overcrowded, and there were not enough houses for everyone to stay in. They could only use wood to build temporary camps outside the Zhongtian camp. To deal with the 3 million strong army of the demon clan, the human race would need at least 6 million people to have any chance of victory. Every day, more and more human soldiers would arrive at the Zhongtian camp. At the same time, Randang Kozii and the other 3 old ancestors had already arrived at the camp from the central command post. Moreover, the number of saints in the Zhongtian encampment had increased from 20 to 50, and this was not all. There were still more saints on the way. Xiao Chun, Qin Shu, and the other 2 girls walked along the streets of the Zhongtian encampment. Along the way, Xiao Chun noticed that everyone seemed to be in a hurry. The atmosphere of war had already spread throughout the encampment. Big brother Xiao Chun, do you think we can win? I heard that the demon clan has gathered 3 million soldiers this time. Gu Lingyao, who was following behind Xiao Chun, was also affected by the atmosphere and asked worriedly. The demon clan was obviously not playing around this time. It could be said that this battle was the first full-scale battle between the 2 races since the outbreak of war in the truest sense of the word. This was the first major battle, and could also be said to be the decisive battle that would determine the direction of the war. Hearing Gu Lingyao's words, Xiao Chun patted the little girl's head and comforted her with a smile. Don't worry, we will definitely win. The demon clan was indeed ferocious, but the human race had also gathered 6 million soldiers in the camp. It was really hard to say who would win this battle. After comforting Gu Lingyao, Xiao Chun led the 3 girls into a courtyard, begging for collection, begging for monthly votes, begging for recommendations. In a chapter. Chapter 902. He led the 3 girls into a courtyard. Xiao Chun had come out today because he had received Chun Yu's invitation. At this moment, the holy sons and saintesses of the 3 sacred sects, as well as the prospective holy sons and saintesses, had all gathered here. Everyone knew that they would be heading to the battlefield soon, and before the battle, the holy sons and saintesses had decided to gather together. Whether they knew each other or not, or were familiar with each other, everyone sat together to drink and chat, because no one knew if this was their last chance. After all, who could guarantee that they wouldn't die in the war? Don't think that they would be absolutely safe in the war, just because they were holy sons and saintesses. Even saints wouldn't dare to say that in a war of such a scale. The only thing they could say was that the holy sons and saintesses had a better chance of survival compared to ordinary people. Moreover, perhaps because of their identity, the demon race would still focus on them. Who could say for sure? It was because of this that they had set up such a banquet. Firstly, it was for the sake of their departure, and secondly, it was a kind of farewell. They didn't want to regret it when they didn't have the chance in the future. Xiao Chun agreed to Chun Yu's invitation with this thought, and brought Qin Shu and the other 2 girls to the banquet. This courtyard was Chun Yu's residence. He wasn't very old, but he definitely wasn't young either. However, the decorations were relatively simple, and naturally couldn't be compared to Chun Yu's cave dwelling in the ancient sacred sect. When Xiao Chun and the other 3 girls entered the courtyard, a disciple of the ancient sacred sect came up to greet them. He bowed respectfully to Xiao Chun, and then acted as a servant, leading Xiao Chun and the other 3 girls to the backyard. For the sake of this banquet, Chun Yu had remodeled the entire backyard. All the useless things had been removed, and the entire backyard had been turned into a huge square. On the square, over a dozen tables had been set up. This was the location of today's banquet. Of course, those who could attend this banquet were at least prospective holy sons of the 3 sacred sects, or people with special identities. When Xiao Chun and the other 3 girls arrived, they saw from afar that Chun Ling and Long Qing had arrived as well. They didn't travel together. Chun Ling and Long Qing had gone out to investigate the demon race's movements today, so they had arrived earlier. Seeing Xiao Chun and the three girls arrive, Chun Ling and Long Qing, who had nothing to do, waved their hands. Seeing this, Xiao Chun took the initiative to walk to their table and sat down beside Long Qing. Second sister, Yu and Big Brother went to investigate the movements of the demon race. What did you find? The demon clan has already entered the plains. It seems that the battle will begin in, at most, 3 days. Hearing this, Long Qing replied truthfully. At most, 3 days? Hearing this, Xiao Chun murmured. However, at this time, Chun Yu and the others took the initiative to find Xiao Chun and dragged him to drink. There were no rules at this banquet, so everyone drank happily. Moreover, in the face of the impending battle, even if there were any grudges between them, they had temporarily put them aside. It had always been like this. They couldn't even control their own lives, so who would remember the grudges of the past? Including Xiao Chun and the Frost Python. They had also forgotten about the past. Now, everyone present only had one enemy, and that was the demon race. They drank to their heart's content, but at the same time, they were also a little sad. In the face of the impending battle, everyone's mood was a little heavy. Only God knew how many of them would still be alive after tomorrow. Perhaps the person you were drinking with today would be separated by life and death the next day. This was completely possible. The banquet lasted until late at night before everyone dispersed and returned to their residence. In the next few days, Xiao Chun didn't go out. However, his old friends from the heavenly Qin continent took the initiative to visit him and gathered together to drink. Even the rulers were present. The preparations for the battle were basically complete. All kinds of pills and talismans were all gathered at the Zhongtian encampment. At the same time, the human race had gathered an army of more than 6 million people at the Zhongtian encampment. By the time the army had finished preparing the pills and talismans, 3 days had already passed. On this morning, many people were still cultivating when they were suddenly awakened by the sound of war drums. The war drums resounded through the sky. Hearing this sound, everyone immediately gathered together. When the war drums were beaten, it meant that the battle was about to begin. The army of more than 6 million people gathered together according to different camps. Led by many half-step saints, they began to rush to the front lines. The army of more than 6 million people left the Zhongtian encampment at the same time and headed towards the depths of the plains. That was the battlefield of the great battle. At the same time, Xiao Chun and the other saints, as well as prospective saints and prospective saints, followed the army and left the Zhongtian encampment along with the various saints. Dust flew everywhere as the army advanced majestically. Because they were already prepared, the army of more than 6 million people didn't appear chaotic. On the contrary, it was very orderly. Together with Chun Ling, Long Qing, and the others, Xiao Chun had already heard from the various saints that the demon army had already entered the core area of the eastern plains of the Sacredine Prefecture early this morning. They weren't far from the battlefield that the ancestors had chosen, so it was time for the human race's army to meet the enemy. The various ancestors had set the battlefield at the center of the eastern plains. The terrain there was the most open. Firstly, there was no place to hide. Secondly, it was impossible to launch a surprise attack. To both sides, it was the fairest battlefield. The army of more than 6 million people took a day to finally reach the battlefield when the sun was setting. At the same time, many humans also saw the figures of the demon army from afar. Because it was a plain area, cultivators could still vaguely see the demon army even from hundreds of miles away. Similarly, the demon army was densely packed and black, advancing towards them like a wave. The two armies finally met on the battlefield. The war drums thundered. Finally, both sides stopped when they were 100 miles apart. At the same time, 4 figures appeared in the center of the two armies. These 4 figures were Randang Kozii and the other human ancestors. Prime Saint Tianyang spoke first when Randang Kozii and the other 3 appeared and looked in the direction of the demon army. What? Even the demon ancestors don't dare to come out and meet us. Haha, why wouldn't we dare? As Prime Saint Tianyang spoke, a hearty laugh sounded. Then, Sha Yelu, Bulu Ling, and the other 3 demon ancestors appeared. The ancestors of both sides finally met face to face. At this time, whether it was the human race or the demon race, everyone looked at the 8 figures in the sky, seeking collection, seeking monthly votes, seeking recommendation. In a chapter. Chapter 903. The setting sun was as red as blood. For this battle, both sides had gathered almost all of their forces. The human race had an army of more than 6 million, while the demon race had an army of more than 3 million. At this moment, both armies were ready for battle. Their gazes were fixed on the 8 figures standing proudly in the sky. At this moment, the 8 patriarchs only needed to give the order for the battle to begin. Like everyone else, Xiao Chen also looked at Randang, Cozy Eye, and the others in the sky. The battle had not begun yet, but Xiao Chen's heart had already begun to feel restless. The smell of iron and blood spread through the army. Everyone unconsciously emitted spiritual energy fluctuations. Everyone's expression was extremely solemn. However, compared to the solemnity of the people below, Randang, Cozy Eye, and the others in the sky looked very calm. Of course, this did not mean that their hearts were still as calm as an ancient well. It was just that at their level, even if there were waves in their hearts, they would not show it on the surface. Looking at each other, the demon race patriarch, Sha Yelu, spoke first. Human race patriarchs, we finally meet. What do you think? Nothing much. If you want to fight, then bring it on. Hearing this, Prime Saint Tianyang, who had the most fiery temper, immediately replied in annoyance. In fact, both sides did not have much to say. They just had to fight. Therefore, as soon as Prime Saint Tianyang's voice fell, another demon race patriarch beside Sha Yelu immediately released a surge of demonic qi. Then, without saying who made the first move, the 8 patriarchs immediately engaged in a great battle. Their figures shot straight into the sky and disappeared into the void. The patriarchs had already engaged in a great battle. Below, the saints from both sides also shouted at the same time. Kill! Then, on the boundless eastern plains of the Sacredine State, the armies of the human race and the demon race rushed towards each other like 2 torrents. The scene of nearly 10 million people colliding head-on was so shocking that it could no longer be described with words. It was only a single contact, but the warriors at the front were already bleeding profusely. Behind them, more and more people continued to surge forward. The battle line was very long, hundreds of miles long. The entire eastern plain had become a huge furnace, a furnace that was constantly harvesting lives. Without experiencing war, one would never know the cruelty of war. On the battlefield, human life was the most fragile thing. Every second, a life was lost. The battle broke out. Needless to say, both sides chose their own opponents. The human saints naturally fought the demon saints, and the half-saints were also suitable for half-saints to fight. With earth-shaking battle cries, Xiao Chun was also in the battle like the others. As he had not met any demon prince for the time being, Xiao Chun was fighting a fierce battle with ordinary demon fighters. In fact, in terms of a number of holy sons and demonic sons, the human side definitely had the advantage. Not to mention the number of holy sons and holy daughters of the 3 sacred sects. Just Xiao Chun, Chun Ling, and Longqing all had the battle prowess of a holy son. At the same time, the human side also had the advantage in terms of the number of prospective holy sons and holy daughters. In the fierce battle, Xiao Chun and the other holy sons and holy daughters were fighting their own battles and had no time to care about others. At this moment, after Xiao Chun had killed more than 10 demons in a row, no less than 100 human warriors had gathered around him. The battlefield of 10 million people was very large, so it was divided into many small battle zones. In the battle zone where Xiao Chun was, the human side was unstoppable because of Xiao Chen's existence. More and more warriors of the human race followed Xiao Chun and continued to attack the devils around them. On the battlefield, Xiao Chen's existence was more of a symbol and a kind of morale. It was not to say that Xiao Chun was very strong. nor was it to say that Shao Chun had the power to change the situation of the battle. In a battle of such a scale, not to mention Shao Chun, even a great ancestor like Randang Kozii would not be able to change the situation. A great ancestor was very strong, but if he was surrounded by millions of soldiers, he would definitely have no chance of winning. It should be known that everyone here, regardless of whether they were demons or humans, was a warrior with a strong cultivation base. They were not ordinary people with no cultivation base. Therefore, in a battle like this, the power of an individual was very insignificant. Shao Chun's existence could actually play a more important role in increasing morale and cohesion. After the black dragon sword in his hand was already stained with blood, Shao Chun swung his sword and successfully sent a demon's head flying. He raised his sword and shouted, "Kill!" With Shao Chun taking the lead, the morale of the surrounding humans was naturally greatly boosted. However, Shao Chun's performance had naturally been noticed by the demons. At this moment, one of the demons was already charging toward Shao Chun. This demon was not Sha Mo, nor was he a demon from the Sha tribe. His name was Bruk, and he was the demon son of the Bru tribe. His cultivation base was at the beginning of the Dao Emperor realm. He was in the same battle zone as Shao Chun. Earlier, Shao Chun had slaughtered over 100 demons like a hot knife through butter, so Bruk had long since noticed Shao Chun. At the same time, he guessed that Shao Chun should be the human holy son, so he did not hesitate in the slightest and charged toward Shao Chun. Holy son of the human race, die. Without another word, Bruk arrived in front of Shao Chun and immediately threw a punch. In the face of Bruk's attack, Shao Chun swept his Jianyi out, and his sword intent at the level of perfection surged out and collided with Bruk's fist. After the collision, Bruk stopped in his tracks, and Shao Chun was forced to stop as well. The two of them faced each other. At the same time, after Bruk blocked Shao Chun, the morale of the demons was greatly boosted. The human race had a holy son, and the demon race also had a demon son. The demon son cheered. In response, Bruk coldly shouted, "All of you scram. This has nothing to do with you. Go and kill all of these humans." He motioned for the demons beside him to fight the other humans. Hearing this, Shao Chun calmly said to the humans around him, "Go and kill these demons." After the two of them spoke, the demons and humans continued to fight. No one came to disturb Shao, Chun, and Bruk. At this time, Bruk also noticed that Shao Chun's cultivation was only at the peak of the Dao sovereign realm. A look of disdain flashed across his face. "Peak of the Dao sovereign realm? I thought you could make me happy, but it seems like I thought too much." Because of his cultivation, Bruk quickly looked down on Shao Chun. However, he didn't know that Shao Chun was also somewhat disappointed in Bruk. This was because among the many demon sons, Shao Chun only wanted to fight Samohi. Unfortunately, Samohi didn't seem to be nearby. Shao Chun didn't see him. Samohi didn't come, but Bruk did. In response, Shao Chun said calmly, "You're not the opponent I most wanted. But since we've met, let's fight. Please add me to your collection. Monthly vote, recommend me." Chapter 904. Shao Chun was only a Dao master, so Bruk looked down on Shao Chun. Similarly, Bruk was not the opponent that Shao Chun had been looking forward to. However, as Shao Chun had said, since they had met, they could only fight. Without waiting for Bruk's reply, Shao Chun attacked him directly. With a slash of his sword, he displayed the 9 thunderclap swords. The swords slashed toward Bruk like a thunderclap. In the face of Shao Chun's attack, Bruk's expression changed immediately. Without hesitation, he chose to dodge. He successfully dodged Shao Chun's attack. However, after the sword slashed past him, it hit a demon not far away. The demon was cut down on the spot. Previously, Bruk thought that Shao Chun's cultivation was too low to be a threat to him. However, after narrowly dodging Shao Chun's attack, Bruk realized that he was completely wrong. The sword attack just now made Bruk's hair stand on end. Although the human in front of him was only a Dao master in the exceptional realm, his strength could not be underestimated. Realizing this, Bruk immediately stopped looking down on him. However, at this moment, Shao Chun had already attacked him with his sword. Shao Chun exerted his sword essence, the law of strength, the law of speed, and the tempered battle body to the fullest. He immediately engaged Brook in a fierce battle. In the fierce battle, Brook became more and more frightened. The human in front of him not only had tricky sword techniques, but he was also extremely fast. At the same time, his soft voice was extremely powerful. The law of strength and the law of speed made every slash of Shao Chun's sword not only contain great power, but it was also so fast that it caught Brook off guard. Brook had thought that he could easily defeat Shao Chun. However, he did not expect that he would be caught in a tough battle against Shao Chun. He could not gain any advantage at all. The more he fought, the more frightened he became. At the same time, his fighting spirit continued to surge. It was not until this moment that Brook realized that the human in front of him was definitely a worthy opponent. He stopped looking down on Shao Chun and completely treated him as an opponent of the same level. After a fierce battle, Brook threw out a punch, which collided with Shao Chun's sword. The powerful aftershock sent both of them flying. They flew back more than 10 meters before they could stop themselves. At the same time, Brook displayed the great demon body, and his demon Chi soared into the sky. After displaying his trump card and displaying the great demon body, a pair of huge wings on his back flapped continuously. Brook sneered as he looked at Shao Chun with bloodshot eyes. It seems like I can also kill a human clan's holy son today. He had already identified Shao Chun as the human clan's holy son. This was normal. After all, it would be strange if Shao Chun was not a human clan saint to be able to fight him to such an extent. As soon as he finished speaking, Brook took the initiative to attack. He took a step forward, and his figure disappeared instantly. It was as if he had teleported, and he appeared behind Shao Chun. He threw out his right fist and sneered. "Human, can you keep up with my speed? Go to hell." The great demonic body was a divine ability of the Devil Clan that could increase one's strength and speed. It was very powerful. Therefore, in the Devil Clan, as long as one could display the great demonic body, he could be regarded as a Devil Son. Of course, saints were excluded. In the state of the great demon body, Brook's strength and speed had been greatly improved. He had absolute confidence in the great demon body, so Brook believed that Shao Chun definitely could not keep up with his speed. However, as soon as he finished speaking, Shao Chun's figure disappeared into thin air. Brook's punch missed and only hit an afterimage. Brook frowned at the fact that he was unable to hit Shao Chun. At the same time, an extreme sense of danger enveloped Brook's entire body. Almost instinctively, Brook hurriedly retreated. It was also at this moment that the edge of a sword came directly from the side, almost brushing past Brook's face. If he had been just a little bit slower, the sword would have definitely hit him. After successfully dodging the attack, Brook looked to his right and saw Shao Chun standing with a sword in hand. It wasn't the first time that Shao Chun had fought a demon clan member who had used the great demon body. During the battle with Sha Mo, Shao Chun had already witnessed how terrifying the great demon body was, and he knew how useless the great demon body was to a demon clan member. So, after Brook used the great demon body, Shao Chun didn't act carelessly at all, and he immediately executed the Stampede of the Tiger. The Stampede of the Tiger was a superb movement technique. Now that it was combined with the laws of speed, Shao Chun's speed wasn't much inferior to Brook's when he used the great demon body. Shao Chun didn't feel too dejected when his attack missed because he'd expected this. After all, his opponent was a demon's son. If he could kill him with a single strike, then would he be worthy of being called a demon's son? You talk too much nonsense. If you want to fight, then let's fight. After he spoke indifferently, Shao Chun charged forward with sword in hand and engaged Brook in battle once more. Shao Chun didn't dare act carelessly when facing Brook. After all, not only was his opponent a demon's son, his opponent's cultivation was even higher than his. He'd already reached the beginning of the Tao Emperor realm. When facing such an opponent, the slightest mistake would definitely cause him to pay a heavy price. So, Shao Chun could be said to be completely focused during the battle, and he didn't dare relax or be careless in the slightest. The ink dragon sword and Brook's fists collided incessantly. At the same time, ripples appeared in the space around them as they fought. It was like a calm lake where rocks were constantly falling into it. The intense battle continued without end. As time passed, neither of them gained much of an advantage. Xiaoqun was injured, and so was Brook. Just as the two of them were locked in battle, a black demonic aura suddenly attacked the two of them from afar. Xiaoqun and Brook both retreated at the same time when they sensed the attack coming from the demonic aura, evading the attack. Brook was immediately infuriated when his intense battle was suddenly interrupted. He directly looked in the direction of the attack, and he roared furiously before he even saw who it was. "Who is it? Are you looking to die?" Naturally, Brook was enraged that someone had interrupted his battle with Xiaoqun. However, as he cursed, a devil who had also used the great devil body appeared in front of the two of them. He glanced at Brook indifferently and said, "Brook, don't worry. He's mine." "Brook, fuck off." The devil who'd suddenly appeared didn't give Brook any face at all. At this moment, Xiaoqun's gaze had similarly descended onto the devil, and a wisp of a smile appeared on the corners of his mouth. It was none other than Sha Mo, whom he'd been waiting for. Chapter 905. Sha Mo's sudden appearance made Xiaoqun smile. On the other hand, Brook was furious. His Bru tribe and the Sha tribe were not on good terms. They had fought many times in the northern demon continent. In addition, Sha Mo did not give him any face at all. One could imagine the anger in Brook's heart. However, although he was angry, Brook was still very afraid of Sha Mo. There was no other way. Sha Mo was known as the strongest genius in the history of the Sha tribe. His talent was unimaginable. In the northern demon continent, even the other big tribes believed that Sha Mo would definitely surpass the other devil sons in the future. It could be said that Sha Mo was a huge mountain that pressed down on the heads of the devil sons in the northern demon continent. Of course, because Sha Mo was still young, he did not completely suppress the other devil sons. However, many of the devil sons in the northern demon continent were already afraid of Sha Mo. It was because of this fear that Brook finally suppressed the anger in his heart and snorted. "Sha Mo, I will remember what happened today," he said with hatred. However, Sha Mo did not care about it all. He despised the Bru tribe. Therefore, when facing Brook, even though he was also a devil's son, Sha Mo did not put in his eyes. After coldly glancing at Brook's back, Sha Mo turned his gaze to Xiaoqun. The disdain in his eyes immediately disappeared and was replaced with an expression full of fighting spirit. He finally found Xiaoqun. Actually, from the beginning of the battle, Sha Mo had been looking for Xiaoqun. To Sha Mo, he did not have any other goals in this battle. The only thing he wanted to do was to fight with Xiaoqun. The two of them looked at each other. Then, Sha Mo spoke first. "Xiaoqun, come. Let's continue the unfinished battle between us." "That's what I was thinking." Hearing this, Xiaoqun replied indifferently. As his voice fell, the two of them moved at the same time and immediately started fighting. Compared to the battle with Brook, the battle with Samohi was much more satisfying. The two of them had the same cultivation and were about the same age. Their battle prowess was even more evenly matched. Sha Mo relied on his iron fist to unleash an imposing aura that could sweep through everything. The ink dragon sword in Xiaoqun's hands was like a dragon's. Wherever the sword's edge passed, the sky and earth seemed to change color. The battle between the two was unusually intense. It was not the first time they had fought, and they had a good understanding of each other's strength. Therefore, the moment they attacked, neither of them showed any mercy. It was as if they were fighting with their lives on the line. The terrifying shock waves from the battle between Xiaoqun and Sha Mo were even more powerful than the battle between Xiaoqun and Brook. The terrifying shock waves from the battle caused the surrounding demons and humans to take the initiative to distance themselves from the two of them. No one wanted to be affected by their battle. Sha Mo's demonic aura soared into the sky, and Xiaoqun's power of laws, sword intent, tempered battle body, and various martial techniques were also endless. The fierce battle continued. After more than 2 hours, both of them had expended a lot of energy. However, there was still no sign of a victor being decided. There was a smile on their faces. The two of them had already expected such an outcome. At this moment, Xiao Chun pointed his finger and said in a deep voice, "Sha Mo, take this." Following his words, Xiao Chun pointed his finger. Immediately, the fifth finger of the nine-heaven sword finger, the shadow-bearing sword finger, was used directly. As soon as he pointed his finger, layers of ripples appeared in the space in front of Xiao Chun. At the same time, cracks began to appear in the space in front of Xiao Chun. This was a sign that the space was about to collapse. The power of one finger caused the space to be unable to withstand it. This was the first time that Xiao Chun had used the shadow-bearing sword finger. As the fifth finger of the nine-heaven sword finger, the shadow-bearing sword finger should be at the heaven-level upper rank. However, compared to other heaven-level upper rank martial techniques, the shadow-bearing sword finger's power was much greater. It could be said that this finger was the most powerful attack that Xiao Chun had mastered at the moment. It was also Xiao Chun's real killing move. Since he started to cultivate the shadow-bearing sword finger several years ago, Xiao Chun had never really used this move in a battle. The reason was that this move was very powerful, but it also consumed a lot of energy. With Xiao Chun's current cultivation at the completion of the Dao Master Realm, he could only use the shadow-bearing sword finger once. If it were not for Sha Mo, Xiao Chun would definitely not use such a terrifying consumption of energy. The cracks in the space continued to expand. At the same time, a black light suddenly shot out from Xiao Chun's finger. This black light was silent, but it made people's hair stand on end. Seeing this black light shooting towards him, Sha Mo's eyelids twitched violently. This was the first time that Sha Mo felt that death was so close to him. This black light made Sha Mo smell the extreme aura of death. Sha Mo dared not be careless. Xiao Chun had already used his real killing move. Naturally, Sha Mo did not dare to hold back. At this time, if he was the slightest bit careless, it was very likely that he would end up dead. Demonic aura once again gushed out from Sha Mo's body as he clenched his right fist tightly. At the same time, dense demonic aura continued to gather on Sha Mo's right fist. In the end, the dense demonic aura on Sha Mo's right fist seemed to have liquefied and was burning like a flame. Flame Demon Fist. With a roar, Sha Mo punched out. The space also showed the limit of collapse. Then, the demonic flame fist and the black sword light collided violently. Such a violent head-on collision should have been very powerful, but at this moment it was silent. However, at the center of the collision, there were ripples spreading out continuously. The silent collision and the silent ripples surged. In the end, there was a sound like glass shattering in the space, and a small spatial black hole appeared. The collision between the two caused the space to collapse. Two warriors at the completion of the Dao Master Realm had actually shattered the space. This was something that no one could accept. This was because under normal circumstances, even a half-saint expert did not have the strength to shatter the space. Only a saint could do so. Of course, it was very easy for a saint to shatter the space. He would not have to use his killing move like Xiao Chun and Sha Mo did. The space began to collapse inch by inch. A terrifying void storm tore out from the collapsed space and quickly spread out on the battlefield. When the demon clan and the human clan who were on the battlefield of Xiao Chun and Sha Mo sensed the terrifying void storm, their faces changed dramatically. They had never thought that someone would actually shatter the space on the battlefield where there were no saints or half-saints. For a moment, someone shouted, "Be careful! Don't be dragged into the void by the void storm. Please collect, vote, recommend." Chapter 906. The collapse of space caused the void storm to wreak havoc on the battlefield. With the black hole as the center, an area of dozens of miles was quickly enveloped by the void storm. Those who were familiar with the void storm had already shouted loudly, "Don't laugh at the danger of the void storm." Especially for warriors with weak cultivation, they couldn't be careless in the slightest, because once they were dragged into the void by the void storm, they were basically dead. Of course, if you were a saint, then you didn't have to worry at all. The void could be understood as a crack in space. There was no life in it. In the endless void, the storm was rampant. Apart from saints and warriors above who could travel through the void, all other living beings below the saint realm were almost certain to die once they were dragged into the void. Who would have thought that on this battlefield where there were no saints or half-saints, someone would actually cause the space to collapse? When the war broke out, experts like saints and half-saints naturally had their own battlefields. After all, if they fought together with everyone else, then a casual aftershock from the battle between saints would be enough to kill many people. Unfortunately, it was still a step too late. At this moment, many people had already been swept up by the void storm. Their bodies were out of control, and they were constantly spinning in the storm. There were both humans and demons. Many humans and demons were swept up by the void storm. Along with the raging void storm, the entire process lasted for about 100 breaths of time. Then, a loud explosion suddenly resounded from the black hole. With a loud bang, Xiao Chun and Sha Mo were the first to be blasted away by the huge impact. At the same time, the other people who were further away were also thrown far away. It was fortunate that they were thrown away, but the warriors of the human clan and the demon clan who had been swept up by the void storm were not thrown away. However, at this moment, the black hole suddenly erupted with a terrifying suction force, crazily sucking in the raging void storm. Naturally, the people who had been swept up by the void storm were also in the black hole. Space had the ability to heal itself. After receiving damage, the black hole would quickly heal itself. At the same time, when it healed, the black hole would erupt with an extremely strong suction force. Once a person was sucked in, their fate could be imagined. More and more people were being sucked into the void and disappeared. However, there was nothing the others could do. They wanted to save people, but there was nothing they could do. They didn't dare to rush into the void storm because they would be sucked into the void as well. They watched helplessly as their companions were sucked into the void. The entire process happened very quickly. Before they could react, the spatial black hole disappeared. The raging void storm also disappeared completely. At the same time, the people who were sucked into the storm also disappeared. Everything was calm. However, at this moment, the battlefield had become extremely quiet. This was because the majority of the people were heavily injured by the terrifying shockwave just now. Of course, the ones who suffered the most serious injuries were naturally Xiao Chun and Sha Mo, who bore the brunt of the attack. Although the two of them weren't swept away by the void storm, they had received the powerful shockwave head-on. Fortunately, the two of them had extremely powerful bodies. Although they were heavily injured and unconscious, they were still alive. Not a single blade of grass remained on the ground. Xiao Chun and Sha Mo, he had been sent flying in opposite directions. At this moment, they were both heavily injured and unconscious. It was also at this moment that the people from the human clan and demon clan arrived at the two of them one after another. After giving them simple treatment, they brought them away from the battlefield. Xiao Chun and Sha Mo, his statuses weren't low, so there were naturally many people who were willing to protect them. Perhaps no one would have thought that their second battle would end in such a way. Both of them were heavily injured and unconscious. Afterwards, they were escorted away from the battlefield by their own people. The battle between Xiao Chun and Sha Mo, he could be considered to have come to an end. However, the battle didn't end because the two of them were unconscious. On the contrary, it became even more intense. The other demons from the demon clan and the holy sons of the human clan were still engaged in an intense battle. Furthermore, as time passed, the battle became increasingly bloody and cruel. At this point, both sides could be said to have paid a heavy price. Of course, in terms of casualties, the human clan obviously had more casualties than the demon clan. There was no doubt about this. The smell of blood filled the entire space. Those ordinary warriors, regardless of whether they were from the human clan or the demon clan, could be said to have died in droves. Corpses had already covered the main hall, and blood had dyed the entire eastern plains red. Both sides had already fought to the point where it could be said that they had almost lost their minds. At this moment, The only thought left on both sides was to defeat the other party. No one retreated. Of course, there was no way out here. The more one feared death, the faster one would die on the battlefield. Everyone knew this. At the same time, because of the influence of the atmosphere, anyone who came here would become a madman. A madman who only knew how to fight and kill. The hot-blooded atmosphere had already driven away the fear in everyone's hearts. The smell of blood had stimulated the most primitive instincts in everyone's hearts. Many warriors of the human clan were fighting crazily with blood-red eyes, as if they were ferocious beasts that wanted to devour people. Even the warriors of the human clan were like this, not to mention the warriors of the demon clan, who were naturally warlike. Those warriors of the demon clan were truly in a killing frenzy. Even if they were besieged by 5 or 6 warriors of the human clan, they were not the slightest bit afraid. The intensity of the battle continued to escalate, as if it had already gone out of control. Under such an atmosphere, a half-saint finally fell. On the half-saint battlefield, a half-saint of the demon clan was besieged by 4 half-saints of the human clan. He, who had long been seriously injured, had finally reached his limit. First, he took a full blow from one of the half-saints of the human clan. Then, his chest was pierced by another half-saint of the human clan. Finally, his head was chopped off by the 3rd half-saint of the human clan. The head of a half-saint of the demon clan flew up into the air, and hot blood splashed out. At the same time, the headless body powerlessly fell from the sky and landed heavily on the ground, raising a cloud of dust. In such a fierce battle, a half-saint had finally died. However, no one had noticed the fall of this half-saint of the demon clan. At the same time, the death of this half-saint of the demon clan seemed to indicate the beginning of a large-scale fall of half-saints. Please collect, please vote, please recommend. Chapter 907. With the fall of this semi-saint demon, a new door seemed to have been opened in the war. Soon, in the next few hours, the scene of semi-saints falling one after another appeared. One had to know that these were the semi-saints of the 2 races. Although they weren't the top fighting strength of both sides, they were definitely strong existences. Let's not talk about other things. In normal times, the status of the semi-saints of the human race of the Tiana continent might not be as high as that of a saint, but once you broke through to the semi-saint realm, your life would be almost no threat. This was because it was very difficult to kill a semi-saint without the help of a saint. In a battle of the same level, it was very difficult for a semi-saint to kill another semi-saint. You might be able to win, but it was very difficult to completely kill the other party. On the path of martial arts, with the breakthrough of cultivation, in addition to the continuous increase of strength and lifespan, the life of a cultivator would also be greatly increased. In the realm of semi-saint, ordinary fatal injuries were no longer a threat to them. Let's put it this way. An ordinary person might be stabbed in the heart, but a semi-saint was different. Even if their heart was directly shattered, they wouldn't die directly. With their powerful cultivation, a semi-saint powerhouse could persist for a long time without a heart. Moreover, through some medicinal pills and their own recuperation, a semi-saint powerhouse could completely recover to their original state. This was the terrifying aspect of a person's powerful vitality. It was also because of this powerful vitality that it was very difficult to kill a semi-saint powerhouse. But now, such semi-saint powerhouses were dying in droves. It had been a day and a night since the outbreak of the battle. In fact, the reason why a large number of semi-saints had begun to die was because of this. At this point, almost all the semi-saint powerhouses had been seriously injured. In this way, many semi-saints could be said to be on the verge of death. This was why such a scene of a large number of semi-saints dying in droves had occurred. If one hadn't experienced it personally, perhaps no one would have believed that semi-saint powerhouses would start to die in droves like ordinary cultivators. Such a large number of semi-saints dying naturally attracted the attention of many people. At this time, many people had gradually realized that the tragic extent of this battle was probably more bloody and terrifying than they had imagined. Even half-saints had started to fall in droves, Then what about saints? And what about those holy sons and demon sons? Will they also die in such a tragic battle? While many people were speculating, such a thing finally happened. On the side of the human race, a holy son from Sun Saint sect had fallen, killed by a devil son. The holy son had fallen. Since the start of the battle, the holy sons and demonic sons of both sides had finally died. There was a bloody hole the size of a fist on his chest. This holy son from the Sun Saint sect had his chest smashed by someone's punch and died directly. His body fell heavily from the sky. At the same time, a demon son who had used the great demon body and was covered in wounds stood in front of the holy son. He sneered as he watched the final scene of the human holy son's death. There was a hint of excitement in his eyes. Clearly, this sacred son from the Sun Saint sect had been told by this demon son that he could kill a sacred son of the human race. This demon son looked very excited. However, perhaps because he had killed the holy son, it had aroused the anger of the surrounding human race cultivators. For a time, many disciples from Sun Saint sect roared and attacked the demon son. Avenge the holy son. Kill him. Someone roared. Then, the demon son was also besieged by many disciples of Sun Saint sect. Seeing this, the demon son sneered. A bunch of ants dares to court death? I'll fulfill your wish. Even though he was seriously injured, the demon son was still fearless. Of course, there were also many demon race cultivators around him. The two sides fought fiercely, but because the holy son of the human race had been killed, the situation on the battlefield quickly took a turn for the worse. The human race was retreating in defeat, while the demon race, under the leadership of the demon son, was full of vigor. The holy son had also died in battle. Of course, this was not an exception. As the battle continued, more holy sons and demonic sons died in battle. However, this time, the one who died was a demonic son of the devil clan, and the one who killed him was Shao Qin's big brother. Chunling's opponent this time was a demon son from the blue tribe. After a fierce battle, Chunling successfully killed the demon son, chopping off his head with one strike. Seeing Chunling kill the demon son, the human race cultivators on the battlefield were full of confidence. Their vigor soared, and they all shouted angrily, Kill all these demons." With the holy sons and demon sons appearing one after another, everyone knew what was going to happen next. Even the holy sons and demon sons had begun to die. So, shouldn't it be time to kill the saints on both sides? Everyone was right. On the third day of the battle, a saint had fallen. This time, it was a saint from a human race who had fallen, a saint from the heavenly saint sect. A rain of blood suddenly fell from the sky above the two armies that were originally fighting. At the same time, there seemed to be a faint sound of someone crying from the horizon. The sudden change stunned everyone. Many people knew what this meant. The sound of crying meant that the heavens were crying, and the rain of blood meant that the heavens were crying. But why would the heavens cry and cry? That was because a saint had fallen. Because a saint had fallen, the heavens were crying. At the same time, accompanied by the rain of blood, a spatial crack appeared in the sky. From the void, a man covered in blood, dressed in rags, and without any aura of life, appeared before everyone's eyes. This was a human race saint. Judging from his clothes, he should have come from the heavenly saint sect. However, at this moment, this once noble heavenly saint was already a corpse. After 3 days of bitter battle, this heavenly saint had fallen. No one knew which demon race saint had killed him. However, with this saint's fall, the cruelty of war was truly displayed before everyone without any concealment. At this moment, everyone knew that no one was absolutely safe in war. Here, human lives were like grass. Not only did ordinary cultivators face the threat of death at any time, but even saints were the same. In such a war, saints were no longer invincible, nor were they undying legends. Even if you were a saint, you would still die in such a battle, just like this heavenly saint. Please collect, vote, recommend. Chapter 908. Saints also began to fall. Both the demon race and the human race were shocked by this. Or saints. They were the strongest experts of the two races. They were the strongest fighting force of the two races. Yet, such a powerful expert was still killed by someone. The rain of blood continued to fall from the sky, and the sound of sobbing continued to faintly enter everyone's ears. Under the cover of the blood rain, the battle did not stop. In fact, after 3 days of fierce fighting, both the human race and the demon race were exhausted. Everyone was holding on to their last breath. Even the demon race, who were naturally warlike, found it difficult to persevere. However, no one dared to retreat. Before receiving the order to retreat, no one dared to take a step back, because once you retreated, the other party would definitely press forward. At that time, you could only return in defeat. This battle could be said to have hit the full force of the human race and the demon race. In the end, after 4 days, the ancestors of both sides finally gave the order to retreat. At the same time, the ancestors of both sides had no choice but to give the order to retreat. Not to mention how they were feeling after 4 days of intense battle. The saints, sage to sages, and ordinary warriors from both sides were already exhausted by this time. Their spiritual energy and demonic aura had been exhausted. From afar, the millions of people looked like gangsters fighting in a stone well. They no longer had powerful martial techniques, nor did they have any soaring demonic aura or spiritual energy. Everyone was exhausted and could not fight anymore. The ancestors of both sides knew that it was enough for them to fight to this point. Both sides needed to rest, and it was meaningless to continue fighting. After the order to retreat was given, both sides tacitly chose not to continue fighting. They retreated in 2 different directions. After 4 days of fierce fighting, everyone just wanted to have a good sleep. They had no other thoughts. No one continued to fight. The 2 clans retreated from the battlefield at the same time. However, although both sides retreated at the same time, they didn't retreat too far. They only retreated 300 miles before they began to set up camp. Obviously, there was still a battle to break out. Retreating 300 li could only be said to have withdrawn from the battlefield, but it was not a complete withdrawal. The human race did not return to the Zhongtian camp, and the demon race did not return to their main camp. Just like this, the 2 sides set up camp on both sides of the battlefield, looking at each other from afar, licking their bleeding wounds while waiting for the next battle to come. After the battle, the survivors retreated from the battlefield far away from Mianyang, leaving behind countless corpses. 1 day after the battle ended, both the human clan and the demon clan sent several teams to the battlefield to collect their corpses. A strange scene appeared. The 2 teams met on the battlefield, but they did not attack each other. They just lowered their heads and silently collected the corpses of the fallen. Countless troops shuttled back and forth on the battlefield, and the corpses were transported back to the temporary bases of the 2 clans. It really took 3 days for the corpses on the battlefield to be cleaned up. However, although the corpses that covered the mountains and plains had disappeared, the ground had become blood red at this time. The once green grassland had disappeared, and in its place was a desolate scene. The blood-red ground exuded a faint smell of blood, and the blood-red color was as if it had been dyed red by blood. No matter how one washed it, there was no way to wash it clean. After the battle, all kinds of work were carried out in an orderly manner. The corpses were collected and transported back to the rear. The human race transported the corpses of the warriors who died in the battle to the other 3 provinces and handed them over to their relatives. The demon race also transported the corpses of the warriors who died in the battle back to the northern demon continent through the Blood Gate for burial. It seemed like a short 4 days of bloody battle, but after the battle, both sides needed time to lick the wounds left behind. For several days, whether it was the human race camp or the demon race camp, the atmosphere was dignified. After experiencing such a bloody battle, not only the human race, but even the warlike demon race had fallen into silence. Those companions who were once together with them, who were drunk with them, might have completely left them in this battle. Many of them didn't even leave behind their corpses. The armies of the 2 clans were like 2 dormant beasts. quietly creeping on the plains in the east of the Sacredine continent, looking at each other from a distance of nearly 1,000 miles. While licking their wounds, they were preparing for the next great battle, preparing for another round of slaughter. Time passed in this quiet and dignified atmosphere. In this short period of peace, both sides were constantly replenishing their forces. The human race once again mobilized their troops from the other 5 garrisons, as well as the 3 provinces in the rear, to reinforce them, while the demon race continued to send reinforcements to the heavenly river continent through the Bloodgate. Fresh blood was constantly flowing into this dormant beast, and these new troops obviously didn't know how fierce this battle was. At this moment, they still seemed a little relaxed, but it was believed that their views would soon change. The reinforcements of the 2 clans continued to pour into the plains in the east of the Sacredine continent, and when both sides were ready, the bloody battle would break out again. Unknowingly, half a month had passed, and at this time, Xiao Chun, who had been unconscious for half a month, finally woke up. Back then, Xiao Chun had fallen into a coma because of the never-ending shock waves that erupted from the space collapse. This was also considered growth. After all, the power of the space collapse was not something that could be resisted by warriors below the level of saints. Xiao Chun had cultivated the tempered body of battle. If it had been anyone else, they would have died long ago. It could be said that this injury was the most serious injury that Xiao Chun had ever sustained, and such a serious injury naturally made Qin Shiru and the other 2 women worried to death. Even Chen Ling and Long Qing were somewhat at a loss. Even the patriarchs like Randang Kozii personally came to visit Xiao Chun. The 3 women had been guarding Xiao Chun all this time. Every day, there would be at least 1 woman watching over Xiao Chun. At this time, when they saw that Xiao Chun was slowly waking up, the 3 women, who were originally whispering to each other, immediately gathered around him. Seeing Xiao Chen's pale face, Qin Shiru was the first to speak. She was no longer as cold as before, and her eyes were full of worry as she said, "Husband, how are you? Don't scare me." "Woo, big brother Xiao Chun." As Qin Shiru spoke, Gu Lingyao directly burst into tears. On the other hand, 100 Flower Fairy didn't say anything, but the worry in her eyes was no less than Qin Shiru's. This was enough to explain everything. Please add this to your collection. Monthly vote, recommend this. Chapter 909. Xiao Chun had finally woken up. Regardless of whether it was Qin Shiru and the other 2 women, Chen Ling or Long Qing, everyone heaved a sigh of relief. His life was not in danger, so he needed to rest for a period of time. However, on the 3rd day after Xiao Chun woke up, the 2 armies once again broke out into battle. However, the battle this time was obviously not comparable to the previous battle that involved nearly 10 million people. The demon race sent out 1 million soldiers, while the human race sent out 2.5 million soldiers. The scale of the battle was not as great as the previous one, but it was still cruel and bloody. Due to his injuries, Xiao Chun could not participate in this battle. After 3 days of fierce fighting, both sides had no choice but to stop. At the same time, many corpses appeared on the plains again. The confrontation on the eastern prairie was formed, and battles broke out frequently. Every time a battle broke out, countless people died, including the demon race and the human race. After resting for a whole month, Xiao Chun's body completely recovered. At the same time, Xiao Chun finally welcomed an important person in the human race's encampment. That person was Xiao Sheng. Since the beginning of the battle, Xiao Sheng had finally succeeded in rebuilding his physical body, and his cultivation had also recovered to the sage realm great perfection. Not many people in the human race knew about Xiao Sheng's arrival, but Xiao Chun was fortunate enough to meet Xiao Sheng because of his identity. When he came face to face with Xiao Sheng again, Xiao Chun was no longer a remnant soul, but a living person. Looking at Xiao Chun, Xiao Sheng scolded jokingly, "You brat, I heard that you almost died in battle a few days ago. Is that true?" Xiao Sheng obviously heard that Xiao Chun was seriously injured, and Xiao Chun did not hide it. Xiao Sheng naturally scolded him angrily. As a family, Xiaosheng naturally did not want anything to happen to Xiaochun. However, scolding aside, Xiaosheng's concern for Xiaochun was genuine. After reprimanding Xiaochun for a while, Xiaosheng reminded him seriously, "You brat, remember to learn to protect yourself on the battlefield in the future. Do you understand?" "Yes." Hearing this, Xiaochun nodded and replied, Well, I still have something to discuss with Randang Kozii. You can go by yourself." Hearing Xiaochun's answer, Xiaosheng said, Xiaosheng's resurrection gave the human race an advantage of having an old ancestor, and naturally, they had to make use of this advantage. In fact, as early as Xiaosheng's resurrection, Randang Kozii and others already had a plan, so they kept Xiaosheng's arrival a secret. This was not to hide it from the people below, but to catch the devil race off guard. It would be best if they could kill an old ancestor of the devil race in one fell swoop. In this way, the following battle would be much easier. It was also because of this idea that Xiaosheng's arrival was not told to anyone, except for Randang Kozii and others. Only Xiaochun knew. Even the saints did not know of Xiaosheng's existence and arrival. Having already told Xiaochun to keep it a secret, Xiaosheng secretly went to the hall where Randang Kozii and others were. Although it was called a hall, it was just a temporary meeting place built with wood. However, only Randang Kozii and the other three were usually here. Even the saints could not enter and leave at will without receiving the 4 summons. They had been waiting for Xiaosheng in the meeting hall. When they saw Xiaosheng appear, Randang Kozii and the other 3 laughed, especially Ancient Saint Ice Lotus and Ancient Saint Mingjia. They were obviously the happiest about Xiaosheng's resurrection. After all, they were both Xiaosheng's women. "Brother Xiaosheng, congratulations." Randang Kozii smiled and congratulated him. "You old man, forget about the congratulations. The devil race is still eyeing us covetously. Now was not the time to talk about this." Hearing this, Xiaosheng laughed and scolded him. Then, he directly sat down between Ancient Saint Ice Lotus and Ancient Saint Mingjia. This seat was originally reserved for him. The 5 of them sat together and discussed the next plan. In fact, Randang Kozii and the other 3 had already discussed the general plan of the plan. Now, the devil race did not know that the human race had an old ancestor, so Xiaosheng was very important in this battle. According to Randang Kozii and the other 3's plan, the human race would take the initiative to attack and force the old ancestor of the devil race to appear. After the battle broke out, Xiaosheng would suddenly appear and cooperate with Randang Kozii to kill one of the old ancestors of the devil race in one fell swoop. The key to this battle was none other than the old ancestors of the devil race. No matter what the outcome was, as long as Xiaosheng could cooperate with Randang Kozii to kill one of the old ancestors of the devil race, the purpose of this battle would be achieved. The plan was very simple. They would use Xiaochun to catch the devil race by surprise. However, this seemingly simple plan put a lot of pressure on Xiaosheng and the others. It cannot be helped. It was not easy to kill an old ancestor. However, there was no better way now. The resurrection of Xiaosheng could be said to be the only way for the human race to break the deadlock. Therefore, this battle was imperative. After some discussion, they confirmed every part of the plan. In the end, the 5 of them unanimously decided that the human race would send out their troops 3 days later. The 2 sides were in a stalemate. Now that the human race had sent out their troops, the devil race could only choose to fight or retreat. However, based on the current situation, the devil race should not retreat. The people below did not know the plan of the old ancestors at all, including the saints. After 3 days, at noon, the camp, which was as usual, suddenly thundered with war drums. Along with the sound of the war drums, everyone was a little confused. However, they quickly lined up and were ready to go. This time, the human race took the initiative to attack. The 4 old ancestors came forward and gathered an army of 4 million. Noticing the unusual movement in the human race's camp, the devil race's camp naturally reacted immediately and gathered an army of 2 million. Moreover, Sha Yelu and the other 3 old ancestors of the devil race also appeared. The 2 armies drove out of the camp one after another and soon met on the battlefield. This was already the 3rd battle between the 2 sides on the eastern plain. It could be said that they were no longer strangers. Therefore, after meeting, there was no superfluous talk. With the roars of the old ancestors from both sides, the 2 armies immediately engaged in a fierce battle. The battle broke out again, and Xiao Chun naturally participated in this battle this time. However, no one knew that the real key to this battle was not him, but the old ancestors. From the beginning to the end, Xiao Sheng did not appear, and the old ancestors of the devil race obviously did not know that there would suddenly be an old ancestor on the human race's side. Battle cries shook the sky. The warriors of the 2 races had already engaged in a fierce battle. At the same time, the old ancestors did not want to be outdone. One after another, they disappeared into the void, and a great battle broke out. Please collect, vote, recommend. Chapter 9-10. This time, it was the human clan that initiated the attack. Millions of troops from the 2 clans were already engaged in a fierce battle. Xiao Chun, Qin Shu, Long Qing, and the others also rushed into the demon clan army. Xiao Chun was no stranger to the battlefield since he came from the heavenly Qin continent. Therefore, Xiao Chun knew what he should do on the battlefield. The battle broke out. In the void, the saints and ancestors of the 2 clans were also engaged in a life-and-death battle. There was no need to say much about the battle between the saints. Since the first saint fell, the 2 clans had lost another saint each. At the same time, they were fighting in the void. However, the ancestors' battlefield was not with the saints. They had their own battlefield. At this time, Randang Kozii and the other 3 were engaged in a fierce battle with Sha Yelu and the other 3. As the strongest forces of the 2 clans, the 8 of them were no strangers to each other. However, what surprised Randang Kozii was that Sha Yelu deliberately chose to avoid him in this battle. Instead, Bulu Ling took the initiative to fight with him. Sha Yelu fought with Prime Saint Tianyang. It was not the first time that the ancestors of both sides had a certain understanding of each other's strength. For example, Randang Kozii knew that Sha Yelu was the strongest among the 4 ancestors of the demon clan. Therefore, Randang Kozii had always fought with Sha Yelu. However, today was a little strange. Sha Yelu took the initiative to avoid Randang Kozii and chose to fight with Prime Saint Tianyang. He wasn't afraid that Sha Yelu would kill the heavenly Sun Prime Sage. Although Sha Yelu was the strongest among the 4 demon race patriarchs, there was a limit to how strong he could be. It was impossible for him to kill the heavenly Sun Prime Sage. At most, he could suppress him a little. What surprised Randang Kozii was why Sha Yelu took the initiative to fight Prime Saint Tianyang. He did not understand, but the battle had already begun. Randang Kozii naturally did not have time to think about it. At this time, Bulu Ling took the initiative to attack, and the 2 immediately engaged in a fierce battle. The patriarchs of both sides fought fiercely. Their battle was definitely much more terrifying than the battle between ordinary saints. In other words, it was fortunate that the battle between the patriarchs was taking place in the void. If it had been outside, the aftermath of their battle would have been enough to kill hundreds and thousands of experts from the 2 races. It should be known that although Randang Kozii, Shealu, and the other patriarchs were also in the Sage Realm, they had already reached the end of the Sage Realm. It was just that they didn't have the power of origin. Once they found the power of origin, their cultivation would definitely break through to the quasi-Sage Realm. The battle was extremely intense. For the sake of the rise and fall of their respective races, these old monsters who had lived for an unknown period of time were also fighting with their lives on the line. Until now, the 4 ancestors of the Devil tribe still didn't know that there was someone hiding in the dark, waiting for an opportunity to take action. As for who this person was, needless to say, it was Xiao Sheng. However, Randang Kozii and the others definitely did not expect that the Devil Tribe actually had their own wishful thinking. This was also the reason why Xiaolu had chosen to take the initiative to fight Prime Saint Tianyang. After the battle broke out, no one expected that a total of 12 saints of the Devil Tribe would appear in the camp of the Devil Tribe. The battle had already broken out, but there were still as many as 12 saints of the Devil Tribe who had not participated in the battle. Moreover, these 12 saints of the Devil Tribe were unfamiliar faces and had clearly just arrived from the northern Devil Continent. The Devil Tribe had also chosen to keep the arrival of these 12 saints a secret. Obviously, the Devil Tribe also had their own motives for hiding the existence of these 12 saints. At this moment, the 12 saints who had yet to participate in the battle all looked in the direction of the battlefield. The leader of the group said indifferently, "It's almost time. Everyone, let's do it." With that, the 12 saints disappeared into the void at the same time. They didn't know that the Devil Tribe had hidden 12 saints. As a result, the number of ancestors of the Devil Tribe had already exceeded that of the human tribe. Of course, the human tribe had one more ancestors than the Devil Tribe, but both sides were still unaware of this. While the 12 saints of the Devil Tribe were moving out, Xiao Sheng, who was hiding in the dark, spotted Randang Kozii, who was entangled with Xiao Sheng. Just as the two of them were entangled, Xiao Sheng suddenly attacked. A terrifying aura suddenly descended from the sky. Then, Xiao Sheng's figure appeared. Without any hesitation, he slashed his sword at Blue Ling. There was no inverse at all, but Blue Ling was obviously not an ordinary person. Knowing that he couldn't dodge Xiao Sheng's attack, Blue Ling tried his best to avoid his vital parts, but Xiao Sheng's sword struck his back. The sword had injured Blue Ling, but it didn't make him lose his ability to fight. In response, Xiao Sheng didn't hesitate and immediately joined forces with Randang Kozii to entangle Blue Ling, making it impossible for Blue Ling to escape. They definitely couldn't give Blue Ling a chance to escape. They had to kill Blue Ling today. With the appearance of Xiao Sheng, the other three ancestors of the Devil Tribe of Xiaolu were also shocked. They didn't expect the human tribe to have such a hidden ancestor. Seeing Xiao Sheng and Randang Kozii besieging Blue Ling, the three of them knew that Blue Ling was probably doomed today. With the two ancestors joining forces, there was at least an 80% chance that Blue Ling would die today. Shayla broke out in cold sweat. He was supposed to fight with Randang Kozii today, but for some reason, he chose to fight Prime Saint Tianyang instead. Xiao Sheng's sudden appearance caught Xiaolu and the others off guard. However, it was impossible for them to rescue Blue Ling now. After a brief moment of shock, Xiaolu quickly regained his senses. A cold light flashed in his eyes as he looked at Prime Saint Tianyang. The human tribe is really something. You actually hit an ancestor-level figure. Cut the crap. Let's fight. Hearing that, Prime Saint Tianyang completely ignored him. With a cold shout, he took the initiative to attack. Facing Prime Sage Tianyang's attack, Xiaolu's eyes flashed with extreme, killing intent. But so what? Do you think our demon race is the only patriarch who will fall today? The same goes for your human race. As Xiaolu's voice fell, 12 saints of the Devil Tribe suddenly appeared around Prime Saint Tianyang. Prime Saint Tianyang's eyelids twitched in the face of the sudden appearance of the 12 saints of the Devil Tribe. At the same time, Xiaolu also shouted in a deep voice, "Kill!" In this battle, it could be said that both sides had their own plans, and their goal miraculously came to an agreement. They both wanted to kill the great ancestor of the other side. However, the human clan did it through Xiao Sheng, the great ancestor who had yet to appear, while the demon clan did it through the 12 saints who had just arrived from the northern demon continent. Please collect, vote, recommend. Chapter 9-11. Both sides had their own plans. Xiao Sheng and the 12 saints of the demon race appeared. Just like Xiaolu and the others, Xiao Sheng and Randang Koziai's expressions changed slightly when they saw the 12 saints of the demon race. It could be said that Xiao Sheng's plan had succeeded, but the demon race's plan had also succeeded. Both sides were now in the same situation. Just like how Bruce Ling was likely to be killed by Xiao Sheng and Randang Cozy Eye today, Prime Saint Tianyang was also very likely to be killed by Sha Yelu and the 12 Saints of the demon race. Both sides had an ancestor who was in a desperate situation. Similarly, both sides had no way to break out of this situation. After all, everyone had their own opponents at this time, and they were all entangled by the other side. One great ancestor for another. That was probably the end of it. No one had expected things to develop like this, but there was no turning back now. After a brief moment of shock, Xiao Sheng was the first to recover and said coldly to Randang Cozy Eye, Kill. Kill him first before anything else. It was too late to rescue Prime Saint Tianyang now, and it was also impossible. They could only do their best to kill Bruce Ling in the shortest time possible. If Prime Saint Tianyang could hold on until Xiao Sheng and Randang Cozy Eye killed Bruce Ling, the stalemate would naturally be broken when they were free. However, the premise was that Prime Saint Tianyang could hold on. Similarly, the demon race had the same logic. As long as Bruce Ling could hold on until Sha Yelu and the 12 Saints of the demon race killed Prime Saint Tianyang, the stalemate between the demon race and the demon race would also be broken. Both sides were racing against time to see who could kill the other side's ancestor first. Xiao Sheng and Randang Cozy Eye did not show any mercy and immediately launched an attack on Bruce Ling. Every attack was a killing move. At the same time, Sha Yelu and the 12 Saints of the demon race also launched an attack on Prime Saint Tianyang without holding back. For a time, Blue Spirit and Prime Saint Heavenly Sun were locked in a bitter battle. Judging from their appearances, it was obvious that they would not be able to hold on for long. Needless to say, Bulu Ling was definitely no match for the two patriarchs when they joined forces, and he could only bitterly hold on now. Prime Saint Tianyang, on the other hand, was facing the 12 demon saints and Sha Yelu, the demon patriarch. His situation was not looking good either. It should be known that the 12 saints that the devil race had hidden in order to kill the human race's ancestor were all at the perfection saint realm. The 12 saints had reached the perfected saint realm. Although their individual strength was not as great as a patriarch's, their combined strength was enough to contend against a patriarch. At this moment, Prime Saint Tianyang not only had to face the 12 demon race saints, but he also had to face the patriarch of the demon race, Sha Yelu. Originally, if these 12 demon saints were to join the battle below, the demon race would definitely have a great advantage. However, Sha Yelu and the others did not do so. This was because they knew very well that it was better to let the 12 saints appear unexpectedly and kill a human race's ancestor than to let them help in the battle below. The significance of killing a human race's ancestor was much greater than 1 or 2 victories. The existence of a human race's ancestor was a deterrent. If they could kill a human race's ancestor, it would definitely be a good thing for the demon race. Unfortunately, the human race was also prepared. Xiao Sheng's appearance completely shattered the demon race's dream. Both sides were racing against time, trying to kill the other side's ancestors first. The battle between the ancestors had reached the most intense moment. At the same time, on the battlefield between the two armies, as expected, blood had already flowed like a river. Fresh blood stimulated everyone's nerves. In this battle, Xiao Qin's opponent was naturally Shamo. This time, the two of them met very quickly, and it was hard to tell who had the upper hand. After both of them were seriously injured last time, Shamo's injuries had obviously healed, and he was equally matched with Xiao Qin. However, no one knew if it was because the previous incident had spread, but at this moment, no one dared to approach Xiao Qin and Shamo. Regardless of whether it was the demon race or the human race, everyone was hiding far away. What a joke. These two guys were absolutely ferocious. Below the Sage Realm, these two perverts could actually break the space and cause it to collapse. After hearing about what happened last time, it was obvious that no one wanted to touch this frown again. They were afraid that these two perverts would really fight and collapse the space again. At that time, wouldn't they have to be buried with them again? When immortals fought, mortals suffered. Since they could not afford to provoke them, they could only hide. Therefore, a very strange scene occurred. There was no one around Xiao, Chun, and Shamo. Regardless of whether it was the human race or the demon race, everyone had fled far away. The battle continued. The sun rose and set, but the two sides in the battle were completely unaware of it. On the evening of the second day of the battle, the setting sun was like blood. Suddenly, a rain of blood fell from the sky. It was accompanied by faint cries, but the armies of the two races seemed to have become numb to the descent of the rain of blood. Even though they knew that the rain of blood represented the fall of a saint. So what? It wasn't the first time a saint had fallen on the battlefield. In the beginning, no one paid too much attention to it, and they merely thought that another saint had fallen. But it didn't take long for a human Dao Emperor Realm expert to exclaim with shock when a corpse descended from the sky, and he seemed as if he'd seen a ghost. Impossible, this is impossible. The ancestor, the Dao Emperor of the human race, who cried out in surprise, was from the Sun Saint sect. At this moment, his eyes were wide open as he stared fixedly at the corpse that fell from the sky. Since it was able to make a Dao Emperor lose his composure, then it was obviously not a simple matter. Along with this person's exclamation of surprise, it wasn't long before more and more human cultivators started to pay attention to the corpse in the sky. With a single glance, all of them were shocked, including Xiao Chun. As for the reason, it was none other than the person who had fallen at this moment was the ancestor of the Sun Saint sect, Prime Saint Tianyang. In the beginning, everyone thought that it was just another saint who had fallen, but no one expected that it would actually be the ancestor who had fallen this time. The people in the outside world didn't know what had happened in the void at all. Why even an ancestor-level figure had died. When they saw Prime Saint Tianyang's corpse falling from the sky, the morale of the human race instantly dropped to a freezing point. It couldn't be helped. The fall of the ancestor was definitely a heavy blow to the human race. It was a huge blow that they couldn't accept at all. Begging for collection, begging for monthly votes, begging for recommendations. Chapter 9:12. The fall of Prime Saint Tianyang was absolutely a devastating blow to the human race. Even Xiao Chun stared blankly at the corpse falling from the sky. It was a familiar face, but at this time his eyes were wide open, and there was not the slightest vitality in his body. From the expression of Prime Saint Tianyang before his death, it was not difficult to guess how unwilling he was at the last moment of his life. Even if he died, he would not be able to rest in peace. What happened? What happened in the void, on the battlefield of the old ancestors? Why would a character like Prime Saint Tianyang fall? Facing everything in front of them, everyone had this question in their hearts. Everyone had thought that in a war, semi-sages would die, holy sons would die, and even saints would die, but they never thought that an old ancestor would die in a war. An old monster like Prime Saint Tianyang, who had lived for thousands of years, could almost be said to have become a god in the eyes of the people of the Tiana continent, at least in the Yangqing province. But now, the god in people's hearts had died. It was conceivable how the human race felt at this time. Compared to the human race, whose morale had fallen to the bottom, the morale of the demon race was greatly boosted. Even Sha Mo looked at Xiao Chun with a confident smile on his face. Xiao Chun, it seems that the human race is going to lose. Even the old ancestor has fallen. Sha Mo's words made it seem as if the human race had already lost the war. Not only Sha Mo, but the other demon race members also showed confident smiles. However, this smile did not last long, because at this time, the blood rain was still falling, and there were still faint cries coming from the clouds in the sky. Accompanied by the blood rain and the cries, the sky was torn open again, and another corpse fell from the sky. Seeing this corpse, the human race was stunned, and the demon race was stunned. Their expressions were exactly the same as the human races when they saw Prime Saint Tianyang's corpse. The demons were originally extremely excited, but after just a few breaths of time, they could no longer be happy. This was because the appearance of the second corpse had shattered all their dreams and confidence. Yes, The second corpse that appeared from the void was the old ancestor of the demon race, Blue Spirit. Instantly falling from heaven to hell, the smile on his face didn't even have time to disappear. Shamohi stared blankly at Blueling's corpse and asked, as if he was talking to himself, "Old ancestor Blue Spirit? How is this possible? How is that possible?" Prime St. Heavenson's corpse had appeared, but shortly after, Blueling's corpse had also appeared. In other words, this battle had resulted in the deaths of two patriarchs. This was impossible, absolutely impossible. What had happened in the void? What had happened? What had caused the two ancestors to fall one after another? Whether it was the devil race or the human race, it was hard for them to accept the fall of the two ancestors. This was simply an impossible thing. However, no matter how unwilling they were, the truth was right in front of them. Prime St. Tianyong and Blueling had indeed died. Due to the death of the two ancestors, the battlefield, which was originally filled with the sounds of killing, became quiet for a moment. This strange silence quickly spread throughout the entire battlefield. The experts from the two clans who were in the middle of a fierce battle also stopped what they were doing and looked at the two corpses in the sky in a daze. The battle had stopped because of the deaths of the two patriarchs. Not only in the outside world, but in the void, the battle between Xiao Sheng and the other patriarchs had also stopped. Sha Yelu had cooperated with the 12 saint experts to kill Prime Saint Heavenson, while Xiao Sheng and Randang Kozii had joined forces to kill Blueling. Both sides had lost an ancestor, but this was definitely not the result that they wanted. At this time, with the death of Prime Saint Heavenson, the number of ancestors on the human race's side had returned to 4. Xiao Sheng, Randang Kozii, Prime Saint Ice Lotus, and Prime Saint Manjia. On the other hand, with the death of Blueling, the devil race only had 3 ancestors left. However, in addition to the 3 ancestors, there were 12 more saint experts whose cultivation had reached the perfection saint realm. In the dark void, the two sides stood facing each other with neither sorrow nor joy on their faces. The result of this battle was beyond everyone's expectations. No one had expected that 2 ancestors would die in this battle. Sha Yelu said faintly with a look of unwillingness in his eyes. "The human race really has some tricks up its sleeve. You actually hid an ancestor in the dark." To be honest, Sha Yelu did not take much responsibility for Blueling's death. He just felt unreconciled. The devil race's plan was flawless. If it had not been for Xiao Sheng's sudden appearance, the devil race would have had the absolute advantage at this moment, because the devil race had killed Prime Saint Heavenson. Unfortunately, Blueling's death meant that everything was in vain. So what if Sha Yelu and the 12 saint experts of the devil race had killed Prime Saint Heavenson? With Blueling's death, both sides were back to square one. Compared to Sha Yelu's unwillingness, Xiao Sheng and the other 3 saint experts felt a deep sense of sorrow. Although they were also unreconciled, they were more sorrowful because of Prime Saint Heavenson's death. They were all friends who had known each other for thousands of years. No one from their era was still alive. Now that Prime Saint Heavenson had passed away, they had lost another one of their old fellows. They were sorrowful and indignant, but they could not show it on their faces. Xiao Sheng replied faintly in response to Sha Yelu's words. "Same here. The devil race is not bad either." Both sides had schemed against each other, and in the end, both sides had suffered great losses. Each side had paid a heavy price of an ancestor's death. Sha Yelu took a deep look at Xiao Sheng and did not say anything else. He immediately ordered the troops to retreat. There was no need to continue this battle at this point. There would be no result, even if it continued. After each side paid the price of an ancestor's death, this battle should be declared over. It was an outcome that was difficult to accept. After Sha Yelu gave the order to retreat, a Dao Emperor from the devil race flew out and caught Blueling's corpse. At the same time, a Dao Emperor from the human race caught Prime Saint Tianyang's corpse as well. They did not care about the others, but the corpses of the 2 ancestors could not be injured at all. The devil race retreated, and the human race did not pursue them. They were still unable to accept the fact that their ancestor had died. As the devil race retreated, Randang, Cozy Eye's group of 4, as well as the human race saint experts, appeared from the void and stood proudly in the sky. However, everyone's eyes were filled with sorrow because after this battle, Prime Saint Heaven Sun would no longer exist in this world. The former overlord of the Holy Sun Prefecture on the Tiana continent, the old man who had existed for thousands of years, had turned into a pile of dirt in the end. Begging for your collection, begging for monthly votes, begging for recommendations. Chapter 9:13. The battle was over, but the price of this battle was unbearable, whether it was for the human race or the demon race. Both sides returned to their camps. For the cultivators of the two races who had been through many battles, they were already familiar with the following tasks: cleaning up the battlefield, collecting the corpses, and treating the wounded. Everything was carried out in an orderly manner. Following the crowd back to the camp, Xiao Chun sat in the room. Xiao Chun was indeed heartbroken about the death of Heavenly Sun Prime Saint, but this kind of heartache was more for the human race. After all, if Heavenly Sun Prime Saint had not died, he would have been a force to be reckoned with for the human race. But now, Heavenly Sun Prime Saint had passed away. Both sides had schemed against each other, and in the end, both sides suffered losses. The human race was in low spirits because of the death of Heavenly Sun Prime Saint, especially the people of Sun Saint's sect, who wept bitterly. Compared to the human race, the demon race was not much better. The death of Blue Spirit had also caused a huge blow to the demon race. Perhaps because of the death of the two old ancestors, there was a tacit understanding between the two sides that no more battles broke out in the following days. At most, there were some small-scale contacts, which were harmless. The armies of the two races faced each other from afar, but they coexisted peacefully. However, this peace was obviously only temporary. Now, the two races had not recovered from the death of their old ancestors. Once the two races walked out of their grief, the war would still continue. Everyone knew that the war would not stop because of the death of a single person. The demon race would not retreat, and the human race would not allow themselves to be captured. It was as simple as that. Time passed slowly. Soon a month had passed. Sure enough, the war broke out again, and both sides sent out their armies to fight fiercely. After a month of rest, both sides could be said to be full of energy. For 5 days, both sides fought fiercely. In the end, the old ancestors of both sides were really exhausted, and only then did the old ancestors of both sides order a retreat. Because Xiao Sheng had joined the human race still had 4 ancestors. However, the devil race only had 3 ancestors left because of Bu Ling's death. However, the devil race had more saints than the human race, so the devil race had utilized 12 saints at the perfection saint realm to keep 1 human ancestor busy. So, both sides were still in a deadlock. After 5 days of intense battle, there was no need to mention the casualties of the 2 clans. Several saints had also fallen, and there were more than a dozen half-saints below them. After battle ended, this massive meat grinder constantly swallowed up the lives of the martial artists of the 2 clans. But every time a battle ended, the 2 clans would constantly replenish the front lines with new soldiers, fresh blood. Being serious was a test for any race. It was a test of the endurance of a race. Just like now, every time a battle ended, the 2 clans would replenish the front lines with new blood from the rear. From the beginning of the war until now, no less than 5 million people had fallen on the human side alone. 5 million people might not be much compared to the population of the Tiana continent, but it should be known that these 5 million people were not ordinary martial artists with no cultivation base. Each of them could be said to be the elite of the Tiana continent, the backbone of a human race. But even so, these lives were still fading away at an extremely fast speed. After every battle, the population of the Tiana continent would decrease a little. Of course, the same was true for the devil race. In a war between 2 races, it was impossible to defeat the other side in one bite. It was a contest of endurance between the 2 races. Whoever could not hold on first would lose. Time passed, and spring, winter, and autumn came. The war seemed to have no end. In the blink of an eye, 8 years had passed. During these 8 years, the battlefront between the human race of the Tiana continent and the devil race of the northern demon continent had also spread out. From the beginning, the battlefield was only limited to the eastern plains of the Sacredine province, but now it had spread across the entire Sacredine province. The battlefront involved every corner of the Sacredine province, and the bloody battle between the human race and the devil race could be seen in every corner. In these 8 years, both the human race and the devil race had suffered greatly because of the outbreak of the war. At the same time, they had also paid the price in the war. Let's put it this way, the elites of the two races had almost been wiped out. At this time, the two armies were still fighting. Although the numbers had not decreased by much, the quality had obviously declined. Take the ratio of the human race as an example. Originally, the lowest cultivation base of the human race's army was basically at the Dao querying realm. But now, although there were still Dao querying realm martial artists, there were more celestial realm martial artists, and even Earth Clear mirror martial artists who had joined the battlefield and engaged in a life-and-death struggle with the devil race. Even celestial realm and Earth Clear mirror martial artists had joined the battlefield. Naturally, the human race's old ancestors were also suffering. It was not that they wanted these low-level martial artists of the celestial realm to join the battlefield, but they had no choice. After 8 years of fierce fighting, the martial artists of the Tiana continent above the Dao querying realm had either fallen or were already on the battlefield. There was a constant need for new soldiers to replenish the front line. Now that the human race no longer had any strong fighters, they could only let the celestial realm and Earth Clear mirror martial artists join the battlefield. Otherwise, the human race would have no soldiers to recruit. With such a huge death toll, the number of the human race of the Tiana continent had truly decreased by nearly 30% in these 8 years. And these 30% were all martial artists of the Tiana continent, not ordinary people. The quality had dropped too much. Of course, it was not only the human race, but also the devil race. Their army had also begun to have celestial realm and Earth Clear mirror martial artists. This was the most direct manifestation of the endurance of the two races. The martial artists of the Dao querying realm and above had already finished fighting. Next would be the celestial realm and Earth Clear mirror martial artists. In the end, perhaps even the mysterious Ian realm and yellow realm martial artists had no choice but to join the battlefield. During these 8 years, Xiao Chun and Xiao Sheng guarded the eastern plain of the Sacredine Prefecture together. This was once the main battlefield of the two races, and it was still the same now. Although the eastern plain of the Sacredine Prefecture was no longer the only battlefield, it was still the most important battlefield. The armies of the two races gathered here were also the largest. Standing outside the central main hall in the camp, Xiao Chun and Xiao Sheng stood side by side, looking down at the endless stream of martial artists of the human race. Xiao Chun said with a sigh, "Old ancestor, the cultivation of these newcomers seems to be at the Earth Clear mirror realm, right? Half a month ago, after a battle on the eastern plain, the human race had once again sent reinforcement from the rear to the Zhongtian encampment. But this time, what shocked Xiao Chun was that although they had also sent 1 million reinforcements, only 1/10 of the celestial realm martial artists were at the Earth Clear mirror realm. That was to say, there were only 100,000 people. The remaining 900,000 were all Earth Clear mirror martial artists, begging for collection, begging for monthly votes, begging for recommendations." End of chapter. Chapter 9:14. The flames of 8 years of war had completely pushed the heavenly river continent to the edge of a cliff. Judging from the millions of reinforcements this time, Xiao Chun knew that the 3 provinces in the rear had indeed reached their limits. They might not even be able to send out Heaven Realm cultivators. Out of the 1 million strong army, only 1/10 of the Heaven Tier martial artists were present, while the rest were all at the Earth Clear mirror realm. Moreover, these people were either old or young. They were all old, weak, sick, or disabled. From a distance, this didn't look like an army going to war. If one put aside their cultivation, this was simply a fleeing army. The entire Sacredine province had been ravaged by Zhanghua. Looking at the ground that had been dyed black with blood, Xiao Chun said helplessly. Hearing Xiao Chen's words, how could Xiao Xing not know that the human race was indeed a lamp that had run out of oil? Xiao Xing knew more about the situation in the 3 provinces in the rear than Xiao Chun. He knew that the 3 provinces in the rear were already at the end of the road. Not to mention the difficulty of ensuring the reinforcements, even pills and talismans could not be refined. It was impossible to continue to ensure the supply of pills and talismans to the front line. Pills and talismans were difficult to refine, not because there were no alchemists or talisman masters, but because there were no materials. The various heaven and earth treasures needed for alchemy had long been depleted after 8 years of consumption. Even the cleverest housewife couldn't cook without rice. Without materials, even if one was a strong alchemist, they could only stare helplessly. Sighing lightly, Xiao Shang said indifferently, "We are persevering, and so are the demon race. At this time, it depends on who will give up first." At this point in the battle, it was no longer a matter of who was stronger or weaker, but who could last longer and which race's endurance was stronger. Hearing Xiao Shang's words, Xiao Chen also understood the reason. Indeed, as long as the devil tribe did not retreat, the human tribe could not relax. The human tribe had consumed a lot of energy, so did the devil tribe. While the 2 of them were talking, Qin Shu and the other 2 girls came to Xiao Chen's side. When they looked at Xiao Chun, the 3 girls' faces were also filled with grave expressions. No one said anything. At this point, all they could do was grit their teeth and persevere. Just like the human race, the demon race had also fallen into this predicament. Almost all of their powerhouses had been killed, and more young and old demons were being transferred to the front lines. At this moment, in the demon race's encampment on the eastern plains opposite the human race encampment, the Sha Yelu tribe was stationed there. Of course, Sha Mo and the other demon sons were there as well. They also looked at the demon race army in front of them, and Sha Yelu could not help but say softly, "We have underestimated the human tribe too much. Who would have thought that the human tribe could be so tenacious? For 8 whole years, our demon race has not been able to take a single step out of the Sacredine province. Now the demon race is completely trapped in this deep quagmire." Originally, when the battle broke out, Sha Yelu and the other demon ancestors had expected to take down the Tiana continent as quickly as possible, but who would have thought that the human tribe would be so tenacious? They had been entangled with the demon race for 8 years, and the outcome of the battle between the 2 races was still uncertain. In 8 years, the demon race of the northern demon continent had gambled everything on this battle. Just like the human tribe, the demon race was also facing a situation where they had no soldiers to recruit, and their resources were about to be exhausted. In the demon race army under Sha Yelu, there were also more Earth Mirror Realm powerhouses than Sky Realm powerhouses. Moreover, the new troops were all old, weak, sick, and disabled. This also meant that the rear of the demon race was also out of options. Otherwise, how could they let these people go to the battlefield? Hearing Sha Yelu's sigh, Sha Maxiong, who was beside him, asked with some doubt, "Old ancestor, I have a question that I don't understand. Speak." Hearing this, Sha Yelu said softly, "Since we can't take down the human tribe, why do we have to fight the human tribe here? I think as long as we retreat to the northern demon continent, the human tribe will definitely not take the initiative to attack. In this way, can't we rest and recuperate?" After 8 years of war, Sha Maxiong, who was already a natural warrior, said that they should rest and recuperate. It could be seen that this battle had made both sides extremely tired. Sha Maxiong was a very straightforward character, but he was not very smart. These days, he had been thinking about why the demon race had not retreated. He believed that as long as the demon race retreated, the war would end, and the human tribe would definitely be unable to attack now. The reason why the battle was still going on was that if the demon race did not retreat, the human tribe would never surrender. As long as the demon race chose to retreat, everything would be solved. Facing Sha Maxiong's question, Sha Yelu glanced at him indifferently. then turned his gaze to Sha Mo and said with a chuckle, Sha Mo, you answer your big brother's question. Sha Maxiong couldn't figure out why the demon race had not retreated. Sha Yelu did not answer this question. Instead, he threw the question to Sha Mo. Compared to his big brother, Sha Mo was obviously much better in all aspects. Therefore, Sha Mo had always known the answer to the question that Sha Maxiong couldn't figure out. Hearing Sha Yelu's words, Sha Mo nodded slightly, then looked at Sha Maxiong and said earnestly, Big brother, you have to know that it's not that the demon race doesn't want to retreat, but that we can't retreat at all. Can't retreat? What do you mean? Sha Maxiong was even more puzzled when he heard this. The reason is very simple. For this war, our demon race has paid too much. If we choose to retreat to the northern demon continent now, we will only die. Big brother, you have to know that the northern demon continent is not the Sky River continent. The northern demon continent is a closed world. Sha Mo said lightly. Hearing Sha Mo's words, Sha Maxiong fell into silence. After a while, he finally understood what Sha Mo meant. No wonder the old ancestors had no intention of retreating. It's not that they didn't want to retreat, but they couldn't retreat. The northern demon continent was a closed world, and for this war, the demon race had already exhausted the northern demon continent. Once the demon race chose to retreat at this time, there would only be one result, and that was extinction. Imagine if the demon race retreated at this time, and the human tribe destroyed the blood door. What would be waiting for the demon race? Guarding the northern devil continent, which was already riddled with holes and was like a lamp that had run out of oil, they couldn't get out. In the end, the devil clan of the northern devil continent would be able to remain silent and live in the northern devil continent for generations until finally they would disappear silently from this world. There was no way out. So even though the situation was already so tragic, the demon race still couldn't retreat. Thinking of this, Sha Mo sighed helplessly. The demon race really couldn't advance or retreat now. Seeking collection, seeking monthly votes, seeking recommendation. End of this chapter. Chapter 9:15. The situation of the devil race was even more awkward than that of the human race. The devil race had no choice but to fight to the death with the human race. If the northern devil continent had not been sealed, the devil race would have retreated long ago. Why would they have to fight the human race here for 8 years? It was precisely because retreating to the northern devil continent meant certain death that the devil race had to establish a foothold in the Sky River continent. Both sides were on the edge of the cliff, and in the next few days, Xiao Qin's mood has been very dignified. In this regard, Qin Shi and the other two women always thought that Xiao Qian was worried about the war, but the three women didn't know that the reason Xiao Qian was like this was because Xiao Qian was thinking about a problem that might end the war. It had been 5 days in a row, and Xiao Qian was not in the mood to cultivate. The thing he did the most every day was to be in a daze. His eyes were dull, as if his mind was wandering. Regarding Xiao Qin's abnormality, Qin Shi and the other two women were naturally worried. But even if the three women asked, Xiao Qian just perfunctorily, not telling the three women anything at all. There was no other way, and the problem that Xiao Qian was thinking about these days was actually very simple. That is peace talks with the devil race. Fortunately, Xiao Qian didn't tell others about this idea. Otherwise, Xiao Qian would definitely become the target of public criticism. After 8 years of bloody war, the two races had long been hostile to each other. Under such circumstances, if Xiao Qian proposed peace talks, one could imagine what the other races would think. However, this was not Xiao Qin's fault. The reason why Xiao Qian had this idea was mainly based on 2 reasons. The first reason was that continuing the war now was not good for the two races, and Xiao Qian had already thought that the only explanation why the devil race had not chosen to retreat was that they couldn't retreat. The northern devil continent was a closed continent, and the devil race would only have a dead end if they retreated. Xiao Qian was very clear about this, and because the devil race couldn't retreat, Xiao Qian was also certain that the devil race would not retreat even if they fought to the last soldier. Since they would die anyway, they could only fight. This was the current mentality of the devil race. For such a devil race, if the war continued, the most likely result would be the destruction of both races. The devil race and the human race of the northern devil continent and the Tiana continent would be completely destroyed in this war at the same time. In 8 years, the celestial being realm and earth mirror warriors from both sides had been fighting each other. Next, it was the yellow realm and mysterious yuan realm. Finally, it was the battle between the ordinary humans and the devil tribe with no cultivation. In the end, the two races were annihilated in the flames of war. The only outcome of the battle was mutual destruction. Obviously, no one wanted to see such an outcome. That was the first reason why Xiao Qian wanted to negotiate. The second reason, to put it bluntly, was Xiao Qian's selfishness. He did not deny that he had deep feelings for the Tiana continent. It was also because of this that Xiao Qian and the people of the Tianqian continent had fought here for 8 years. But in the end, Xiao Qian's roots were not in the Tiana continent, and the Tianqian continent was still waiting for them to go back and save it. If Xiao Qian and the others all died here, what would happen to the Tianqian continent? The Tianqian continent was now being eyed covetously by the demonic cultivators of the Shuama continent. If Xiao Qian and the others had an accident, the Tianqian continent would be finished. From the bottom of his heart, Xiao Qian could not give up the Tianqian continent for the sake of the Tiana continent. After all, the Tianqian continent was his hometown. To be more selfish, if the war continued, then Xiao Qian was likely to call Saint Dan Yun, Saint Nine Heavens, and the others to leave and return to the Tianqian continent. At that time, the fate of the Tiana continent would be beyond Xiao Qian's ability to help. It was a selfish thought, but Xiao Qian had no choice. Because of this, Xiao Qian wanted to see if there was a possibility of peace talks between the two clans. After all, once the peace talks were successful, even if Xiao Qian and the others left, the Tiana continent would at least be preserved. Although it was broken, it was still better than being destroyed. He couldn't bear to leave the Tiana continent behind, so Xiao Qian wanted to create an opportunity for peace talks between the two clans. Don't think that Xiao Qian was selfish. In the past 8 years, Xiao Qian had witnessed too many deaths. Nearly 3/4 of the hundreds of thousands of cultivators of the Tianqian continent had died. If they continued to die, then the whole army would be wiped out. At that time, who would save the Tianqian continent? Moreover, although the saints of the Tianqian continent hadn't fallen yet, if this continued, there would be casualties sooner or later. Xiao Qian couldn't just watch Saint Dan Yun and the others die on the Tiana continent. Xiao Qian kept thinking in his heart. If he wanted to promote peace talks between the two clans, he knew that there was a prerequisite. That was, they must cede a place for the demon race to live. In other words, the two clans must coexist on the Tiana continent. If the demon race obediently retreated to the northern demon continent, this was simply impossible. The demon race would never accept it. It could only be said that the two clans could live together on the Tiana continent. The human race and the demon race living together on the same continent was indeed a bit shocking. But now, this was the only possibility for peace talks. Xiao Qian had been thinking about this problem from the very beginning to the final implementation steps. He thought a lot about it. The possibility of peace talks was possible, but how to implement it? How to promote the old ancestors of both sides to sit down and talk? This was the most important problem. In the end, Xiao Qian could only think of one way, and that was through Sha Mo, he and himself. First of all, although Xiao Qian and Sha Mo, he were the younger generation, their status in the human race and the demon race was not low. They could completely influence the thoughts of the old ancestors of both sides. If he could reach an agreement with Sha Mo, he, and let Sha Mo, he persuade the old ancestors of the demon race, and himself persuade the old ancestors of the human race, then things would be much easier. Of course, he couldn't guarantee 100% success. After all, the decision was still in the hands of the old ancestors of both sides. Xiao Qian and Sha Mo, he could at most play the role of a bridge. But this was the only feasible way. In addition, Xiao Qian couldn't think of any other better way. Moreover, Xiao Chen also believed that the old ancestors of both sides would certainly not want to see the two clans perish together like this. With this idea in mind, Xiao Chen no longer hesitated. He immediately called Qin Shu and the other two girls, as well as Chun Ling and Long Qing, over. Everyone quickly gathered in front of Xiao Chen. Looking at their worried faces, Xiao Chen didn't keep them in suspense and said bluntly, "These few days, I've been thinking about a problem. The war has been going on for so long. If it continues, the only path left for the two clans is to perish together. Therefore, I want to negotiate with the demon race." When these words came out, Qin Shu and the other two girls, as well as Chun Ling and Long Qing, immediately widened their eyes, as if they couldn't believe that Xiao Chen would say such a thing. Begging for collection, begging for monthly votes, begging for recommendations. End of chapter. Chapter 9:16. Qin Shu, Chun Ling, and everyone else stared at Xiao Chen with their mouths agape. No one would have thought that Xiao Chen would actually say something like peace talks. However, everyone was not stupid, especially Chun Ling. He quickly understood what Xiao Chen meant and why Xiao Chen would say such a thing. With a bitter smile on his face, Chun Ling looked at Xiao Chen and said, "Little brother, do you know that if your word were heard by others, you would quickly become the target of public criticism? There's no other way. This is the only choice I have." Hearing this, Xiao Chen also smiled bitterly. Xiao Chen did not think that this war would last for 8 whole years. Even now, there was no sign of it ending. Most of the people in the heavenly Chun continent were already dead. Xiao Chen had to make a decision. Knowing Xiao Chen's difficulties, Gu Lingyao asked half of it. After all, this little girl was not from the heavenly Chun continent. Although she knew that Xiao Chen was from the heavenly Chun continent, she obviously could not guess the meaning of Xiao Chen and Chun Ling's words. "Big brother Xiao Chen, what are you talking about? What do you mean there's no other way? Why can't Lingyao understand?" Gu Lingyao asked with a puzzled expression. Hearing this, Xiao Chen opened his mouth to explain. "Lingyao, you know that I'm from the heavenly Qin continent." "Yes, Lingyao knows." "Then you also know why we came to the heavenly river continent." "Yes. That's why, Lingyao, we can't all die here. My hometown, everyone on the heavenly Chun continent, is waiting for us to return. If we don't return, everyone on the heavenly Chun continent will be killed by the demonic cultivators of the blood demon continent. Therefore, we can't fight to the death on the heavenly river continent. Moreover, if we continue to fight, what do you think the final result will be? Will the demons of the northern demon continent and the humans of the heavenly river continent perish together?" Xiao Chen had nothing to hide from Gu Lingyao, so he told her what he thought without mincing his words. With Xiao Chen's explanation, Gu Lingyao quickly understood Xiao Chen's difficulties. To be honest, the people of the heavenly Chun continent were fighting to this extent for the sake of the heavenly river continent was already very rare. Originally, at the beginning of the war, the people of the heavenly Chun continent like Xiao Chen and the others could leave. After all, they were outsiders. However, because of their feelings for the heavenly river continent, Xiao Chen and the others stayed and fought side by side with the people of the heavenly river continent. The heavenly river continent was the heavenly river continent, but this war had was the heavenly river continent. It was undeniable that the people of the heavenly Chun continent had obtained a lot of opportunities on the Sky River continent. Everyone had made a qualitative leap, just like the rulers of the past. Now, they had all become saints. But on the other hand, in order to repay a debt of gratitude, the original hundreds of thousands of cultivators of the heavenly Chun continent had been reduced to less than 20,000. Even if it was to repay a debt of gratitude, it was already enough. But at this point, Xiao Chen did not want to abandon the heavenly river continent and leave. So, in a dilemma, Xiao Chen thought of peace talks. Peace talks were not only for Xiao Chen and the people of the heavenly Qin continent. For the heavenly river continent, peace talks were the best choice. They could not continue to fight. If they continued to fight, the only path facing the heavenly river continent was destruction. Hearing Xiao Chen's words, everyone's mood was obviously a little dignified. They knew that peace talks were the best way, but it would be difficult to succeed. After all, in the past 8 years, too much blood had been shed between the two races. At this time, peace talks were indeed very difficult. But when it came to the choice of the survival of a race, it was really not suitable to continue fighting. Many people of the Heavenly River continent were still praying day and night that the demon race would retreat in the face of difficulties and take the initiative to retreat. However, it had to be said that these people were too naive. The demon race would never retreat. Even if they perished together with the Heavenly River continent, the demon race would never retreat to the northern demon continent. With sufficient reasons for peace talks, everyone naturally understood Shao Chun. However, understanding was one thing, but to promote peace talks between the two sides, it was not up to them. Only when the old ancestors of both sides agreed to the peace talks could they proceed. "Little brother, what are you going to do?" Looking at Shao Chun, Chun Ling asked. Facing Chun Ling's question, Shao Chun did not hide anything and replied truthfully. "I plan to find old ancestor Shao Shang first, then go to the demon race to find Sha Mo." "You want to persuade old ancestor Shao Shang?" Hearing this, Chun Ling asked, "And if even old ancestor Shao Shang can't be persuaded, then the other old ancestors are even more unlikely to agree. There's no need to find Sha Mo," Shao Chun said. Before starting, Shao Chun wanted to talk to Shao Shang. If even Shao Shang couldn't be persuaded, then everything was just wishful thinking. Hearing Shao Chun's words, Chun Ling nodded. After a while, Chun Ling asked in an extremely low voice, "If the peace talks don't succeed, what do you plan to do?" "Then I can only leave. I can't let the Tianqing Road be destroyed. That's my hometown. However, when I leave, I'll try my best to take as many people as I can. I'll take them to the Heavenly Chan continent to live. It can be considered as leaving some seeds for the Heavenly River continent." Facing Chun Ling's question, Shao Chun was silent for a moment before replying. If the peace talks didn't succeed, Shao Chun would definitely take people and leave. However, when he left, he would take a portion of the people from the Heavenly River continent with him. Hearing Shao Chun's words, Gu Lingyao curiously asked, "Big brother Shao Chun, since you can take people to the Heavenly Chun continent, why don't you take everyone with you? This way, there won't be a war, and there won't be a peace talk." "Silly girl, although the Heavenly River continent has suffered heavy casualties, there are still at least 10 billion people left. Moreover, most of them are ordinary people without any cultivation. If you wanted to take these ordinary people across the void, I'm afraid they'll die before they reach the Heavenly Chun continent." Hearing Gu Lingyao's words, Shao Chun explained with a smile. It was absolutely unrealistic to move everyone from the Heavenly River continent to the Heavenly Chun continent. First of all, those ordinary people without cultivation didn't have the ability to cross the void. They would all die halfway. After explaining to Gu Lingyao, Shao Chun said a few words to everyone, then went to Shao Shung's residence alone. In the backyard, he found Shao Shung sitting cross-legged with his eyes closed. Just as Shao Chun entered the courtyard, Shao Shung slowly opened his eyes and looked at Shao Chun. Shao Shung smiled slightly. "What? Do you have something to say?" However, from Shao Chun's expression, Shao Shung had already guessed that he had something to say. Hearing this, Shao Chun didn't hide anything. He directly sat cross-legged in front of Shao Shung and said with a serious expression, "Yes, old ancestor, I have something to talk to you about. Speak. Is there anything that can't be said between us?" Hearing this, Shao Shung smiled. He signaled Shao Chun to speak. Hearing this, Shao Chun was silent for a moment, then said, "Old ancestor, I think that we should negotiate with the demon race. We, in the demon race, can't afford to fight anymore. Begging for collection, begging for monthly votes, begging for recommendations." In a chapter. Chapter 9:17. Facing Shao Shang, Shao Chun did not beat around the bush and spoke bluntly. Hearing Shao Chun's words, Shao Shang did not change his expression at all. On the contrary, he seemed to have guessed that Shao Chun would say this. After taking a sip of tea, Shao Shang said faintly, you don't want the people of the heavenly Chun continent to die here, right? Hearing Xiao Sheng's words, Xiao Chun did not hide it and nodded calmly. Indeed, Xiao Qin's suggestion for peace was the main reason. The people of the heavenly Chun continent could not die. Otherwise, what would happen to the heavenly Chun continent? One must know that when they left, they carried the hope of the heavenly Chun continent. If they did not return in the end, the outcome of the heavenly Chun continent could be imagined. Seeing Xiao Chun nod honestly, Xiao Sheng revealed a smile and said slowly, "Actually, I've already discussed this with Randing. I've already talked to Randing and the others. Indeed, the war has progressed to this point. It won't benefit either side if it continues." Xiao Sheng said slowly. When he said this, Xiao Chun was stunned. It turned out that the great ancestors already had the idea of peace talks. This was something that Xiao Chun did not expect. However, after thinking about it, this was normal. After all, even Xiao Chun could see the consequences of persisting in the war. How could the great ancestors not understand? As great ancestors, Xiao Sheng and the others obviously had to see further. Seeing Xiao Qin's dazed expression, Xiao Sheng's smile did not diminish. "You little brat, you think you are very smart. How can we not think of what you can think of?" Up until now, many humans have already begun to pray that the demon race will retreat and the war will end. However, they do not know that the demon race has no way of retreating. The demon race has no way of retreating. Even if there is only one person left, the demon race will not retreat. Therefore, Randing and I have been discussing this matter for a long time. Xiao Sheng and the others also knew that the demon race would definitely not retreat voluntarily. At this point, Xiao Sheng paused. Then, the smile on his face slowly disappeared. He looked at Xiao Chun and said in a serious tone, "Since you have the same idea, then Randing and the heavenly Chun continent will give up. Randing and I'll give half of the Sacredine province to the demon race. You know the demon race's current situation. This is the bargaining chip. Of course, this is the bottom line. We have already thought about the demon races, the heavenly demon race, the heavenly Chun elders, and see what they have to say. Of course, this is the bottom line. They could give half of the Sacredine province to the demon race." After hearing Xiao Sheng's words, Xiao Qin quickly understood the intentions of the demon race. First of all, after 8 years of fierce battle, the entire Sacredine province could be said to have been completely destroyed. There was basically no room for survival. Therefore, even if the human race won in the future, no one would be able to return to the Sacredine province to live. To put it bluntly, the current Sacredine province was a land of death. It was a place that was completely unsuitable for living creatures to live. For such a land that was completely worthless, giving half of it to the demon race was actually not a loss to the human race. On the other hand, the importance of the demon race being able to obtain half of the Sacredine province was self-evident. First of all, why were the demon race still unwilling to retreat? The reason was simple. It was because the northern demon continent was a continent that had been sealed. It had no way of communicating with the outside world. People from the outside could not enter, and the demon race inside could not leave. A continent that had no communication with the outside world could only end in destruction. Therefore, the demon race could not retreat. However, if they could obtain half of the Sacredine province, what would that mean to the demon race? It would mean that the demon race had a channel to communicate with the outside world. It could be said that the decision of Xiao Sheng and the other old ancestors was to give the demon race a springboard to communicate with the outside world. This was also the key point of the peace talks between the two sides. As long as the demon race could maintain communication with the outside world, the demon race would obviously not want to perish together with the human race. Of course, the reason why the demon race was only given half of the territory was because the other half of the Sacredine province had to be in the hands of the human race. This was to prevent the demon race from suddenly changing their minds and turning against the human race in the future. Both sides would each occupy half of the Sacredine province. In this way, the demon race could maintain communication with the outside world, and the human race could be on guard against the demon race at any time. As long as the demon race made any strange movements, the human race could react immediately. Furthermore, the demon race would be blocked in the Sacredine province and would not be allowed to invade the other 3 provinces. After understanding the intentions of Xiao Sheng and the other old ancestors, Xiao Chun had to admit that the older the ginger, the spicier it was. Although Xiao Chun also thought of peace talks, compared to the old ancestors, Xiao Chun's idea was still a little too immature. The old ancestors' idea was obviously more perfect. Not only did it give the demon race a reason to negotiate, it also prevented the human race from being in a dangerous, forbidden area. Even if the demon race wanted to turn against the human race in the future, the human race would not be caught off guard. This was the brilliance of the old ancestors. Xiao Chun naturally had no objections to the old ancestors' idea. This was definitely the best outcome. However, before the peace talks, just as Xiao Sheng said, Xiao Chun had to meet with Sha Mo. Sha Mo would first talk to the old ancestors of the demon race about the peace talks and see if the demon race was willing to negotiate. Although Xiao Sheng and the others knew that the demon race would definitely not want to continue fighting if they were willing to negotiate, they still could not let down their guard before everything was settled. Seeing Xiao Chun come back to his senses, Xiao Sheng spoke at the right time. The first step of the peace talks can only rely on you. However, now the human race and the demon race are still in a state of war. If you want to see Sha Mo, you have to go to the demon race's camp personally. I don't need to say more about the dangers involved. Xiao Chun naturally had to go to see Sha Mo. Hearing this, Xiao Chun smiled slightly. Don't worry, it's all right. Well, that's good. Get ready. I'll send 2 saints to go with you. Xiao Sheng nodded. Sending 2 saints to protect Xiao Chun was also for safety reasons. However, after hearing Xiao Sheng's words, Xiao Chun refused without thinking. No need, old ancestor. This time I can go alone. Back then, Sha Mo dared to come to my Zhongtian station alone. Why wouldn't I dare now? Xiao Sheng didn't need anyone to protect him and went to the demon race's camp alone. Hearing Xiao Chen's words and seeing how confident he was, Xiao Sheng smiled again. He didn't say anything else and nodded, agreeing with Xiao Chen's decision. Well, since Sha Mo dared to go to the Zhongtian station alone back then, why wouldn't Xiao Chen dare? Begging for collection, begging for monthly votes, begging for recommendations. End of this chapter. Chapter 9:18. His original intention was to persuade Xiao Sheng, but he didn't expect that he and Xiao Sheng actually happened to coincide. For the peace talks, the several old ancestors had already begun to plan, and they were even more thorough and strict. Originally, according to Xiao Chen's idea, they must carve out a territory for the devil race to live, but the several old ancestors obviously saw more clearly. What the devil race needed was not a place to live. After all, the northern devil continent was enough for the devil race to live, and what the devil race needed was just a face to communicate with the outside world. Now, the decision of the several old ancestors had already given the northern devil continent a springboard, allowing them to communicate with the outside world. In this way, there would be no loss to both sides. The devil race got what they wanted, and the human race would not lose anything because of the peace talks, let alone carve out a territory for the devil race to live. It was indeed astute. Xiao Chun believed that even if he didn't come to Xiao Sheng today, it wouldn't be long before Xiao Sheng would take the initiative to talk to him about this matter. After leaving Xiao Sheng and returning to the banished area, Xiao Chun didn't intend to delay and decided to go to the devil race camp immediately to talk to Sha and Mohi about this matter. He told the contents of his conversation with Xiao Sheng, as well as the matter of preparing to go to the devil race camp to Qin Shiru and the others. Hearing Xiao Chen's words, Qin Shiru and the other 2 naturally disagreed. How could he go to the devil race camp alone? If there was any accident, Xiao Chen wouldn't even have the chance to escape. Not only did the 3 women disagree, even Chun Ling and Long Qing felt that Xiao Chun couldn't go to the devil race camp alone. No matter what, he should take some people with him. At least they could look after each other. However, in the face of everyone's obstruction, Xiao Chun didn't listen at all and just said with a smile, "Well, no need to say any more. Back then, Sha and Mo, he could come to my Zhongtian station alone. Today, why can't I, Xiao Chun, go to the devil race camp alone? Don't worry, it'll be fine. Xiao Chun was actually really confident about going to the devil races camp alone. He didn't say that he wanted to compete with Sha Mo. Xiao Chun believed that Sha Mo would not do anything to him. Moreover, after 8 years of fierce battles, Xiao Chun had a good understanding of the demon race. This was an extremely arrogant race. They would not take advantage of their power to bully others, let alone attack him in this kind of situation. This could be seen from the time Sha and Mo he came to the Middle Sky camp. They clearly had the opportunity to launch a sneak attack on the human race's rear, but the demon race chose not to do so. Moreover, even now, the demon race had not used any despicable methods. Xiao Chun didn't have a good impression of the devil race, but he didn't hate them either. After all, the war between the two races had its own reasons. In the eyes of the human race, the devil race had invaded, but in the eyes of the devil race, they had to do so. But no matter what, the devil race could be considered a righteous race. They had their own bottom line and pride. Seeing that Xiao Chun had already made a decision, although everyone was still very worried, they could only nod and agree in the end. After being together for so long, whether it was Qin Shiru and the other two girls, Chun Ling and Long Qing, they all knew that although Xiao Chun was usually very easy to talk to, he was actually very stubborn in his bones. Once he had decided on something, even 10 oxen couldn't pull him back. Therefore, it was useless to continue persuading him. He insisted on going alone. Before leaving, Qin Shiru and the other two girls constantly reminded Xiao Chun to be careful. Everything else was secondary. His own life was the most important. In the face of the three girls' constant warnings, Xiao Chun smiled helplessly and said, "I say, why are you all like old women? I've already said it 100 times. Isn't it because we're worried about you?" Hearing Xiao Chun's teasing, the three girls said snappily. The originally tense atmosphere slowly eased under Xiao Chun's teasing. Xiao Chun also gave the three girls a reassuring look. Then, he hurried towards the devil race's main camp. The main camps of the two races were not far from each other. Therefore, Xiao Chun did not take long. In just 15 minutes, he arrived outside the main camp of the devil race. However, just as he arrived outside the main camp of the devil race, more than 100 devil race experts appeared around Xiao Chun. Obviously, they had already discovered Xiao Chun and had been waiting here for a long time. Looking at the 100 or so devil race experts around him, Xiao Chun recognized the leader. It was Sha Mo's third brother, Sha Moqing. As the devil race's devil son, Sha Moqing looked calmly at Xiao Chun and said coldly, "Xiao Chun, what are you doing here? Do you want to die?" After 8 years of intense battle, the two sides were already rather familiar with each other. In particular, Xiao Chun and Sha Moqing were chosen and devil sons. They knew each other very well. It was exactly because of their mutual understanding that Sha Moqing directly called out Xiao Chun's name. Xiao Chun's expression did not change at all when he heard that. Instead, he smiled. "I've come to drink with your brother." "What can I? Drink with Sha Mo?" The other devil race experts present did not seem surprised when they heard that. Actually, this was because they had seen far too much. Out of the 8 years of intense battle, the most talked about topic was probably the relationship between Xiao Chun and Sha Mo. One of them was the chosen of the human race, while the other was the devil son of the devil race. Moreover, after 8 years of battle, the two of them had gradually matured. They were praised as the most talented chosen and devil son of their respective races, respectively. It was these two dazzling humans. On the battlefield, Xiao Chun and Sha Mo were mortal enemies. However, in private, the two of them would often invite each other to drink. They were both friends and foes. In the beginning, the people of their respective races found it strange. They were clearly enemies, but these two fellows were acting like friends. However, as the number of times they did this increased, everyone became used to it. It was because of this that the surrounding devil race experts did not act strangely when Xiao Chun said that he wanted a drink with Sha Mo. After all, this was very normal for Xiao Chun and Sha Mo. However, What was strange was that Xiao Chun had actually agreed to find Shamo. In the past, the two of them would meet in a place with no one around. They would not go to the human camp, nor would they come to the demon camp. They could not figure it out. Hearing Xiao Chen's words, Sha Maching revealed a smile and said indifferently, "If you want to find fourth brother, fine. If you defeat me, I'll send someone to inform him. Otherwise, you can scram." As he said that, Sha Maching's eyes flashed with battle intent. He had long known that Xiao Chun was praised as the most talented chosen of the human race. However, it was a pity that he had never fought with Xiao Chun before. Today, he had a rare opportunity. Sha Maching also had the idea of fighting with Xiao Chun. He wanted to see just how strong this most talented chosen of the human race was. Even his own fourth brother praised Xiao Chun, begging for collection, begging for monthly votes, begging for recommendations. In a chapter. Chapter 919. Sha Maching was actually very respectful towards his fourth brother. It might sound a little strange, but as the older brother, it was indeed a little strange for him to respect his younger brother. However, Shamo's talent was there for all to see. Although he was the youngest, he was the most accomplished of the four brothers. After 8 years, Shamo was already able to defeat Sha Maching. Moreover, he was able to surpass an entire realm. Defeating Sha Maching, who was at the beginning of the Dao Emperor realm, with his cultivation at the peak of the Dao Sovereign realm, was indeed an achievement that made others sigh in admiration. After all, Sha Maching was also a demon's son. It was precisely because of his respect for Sha Mo that Sha Maching naturally wanted to see how strong Xiao Chun was. After all, Xiao Chun and Sha Mo were locked in battle, which was enough to show how extraordinary his strength was. Sha Maching wanted to experience it for himself. Sha Maching took the initiative to provoke Xiao Chun because he wanted to fight. Moreover, Sha Maching didn't really care about the outcome of this battle. He just wanted to see how strong the most talented holy son of the human race was and how big the gap was between him and Xiao Chun. Xiao Chun didn't refuse when he sensed Sha Maching's battle intent. He nodded slightly and said, "Since you want to fight, then come." Xiao Chun gladly agreed because he knew what Sha Maching meant. With that, Xiao Chun's spatial ring flashed and the ink dragon sword appeared in his hand. Sha Maching didn't say anything else when he saw this. He cupped his hands and took the initiative to attack. Without any hesitation, Sha Maching immediately used the great demon body. Sha Maching was naturally no fool when facing Xiao Chun. If he didn't use the great demon body, he wouldn't be a match for Xiao Chun at all. After all, even Sha Mo had to use his full strength when facing Xiao Chun, let alone Sha Maching. Sha Maching was the weakest amongst the four brothers of the Sha clan, so he used his full strength right from the start. Using the great demon body, Sha Maching immediately rushed toward Xiao Chun. Facing Sha Maching's attack, Xiao Chun didn't move much. He didn't even use any martial skills. He simply slashed out with his sword. However, under the enhancement of the law of force and law of speed, not only was the sword extremely fast, but its power was also ridiculously high. The tip of the sword slashed across, and the ground was cut open like tofu. Then, in the blink of an eye, the tip of the sword hit Sha Maching. He put his hands in front of his chest to block Xiao Chen's sword. Although he managed to block it in the end, he still involuntarily took several steps back. In this exchange, Xiao Chun had the upper hand. This time, Xiao Chun took the initiative to move forward and immediately engaged in a fierce battle with Sha and Mo Cheng. With the great demon body, Sha and Mo Cheng's power and speed were greatly increased. However, even so, in front of Xiao Chun, Sha and Mo Cheng could only defend himself. Be in terms of speed, strength, or physical strength, Xiao Chun was superior to Sha Maching. Everyone could see that. After more than 100 moves, Xiao Chun had completely suppressed Sha and Mo Cheng. However, Xiao Chun clearly didn't have any ill intentions towards Sha and Mo Cheng, so he didn't kill him. It was more like he was training with Sha and Mo Cheng. Originally, he didn't come here to fight the demon clan, so there was no need to offend Sha Mo Cheng. Secondly, Xiao Chen knew Sha Mo Cheng's intentions. He also understood that Sha Mo Cheng didn't want to do anything to him. He just wanted to fight him. As such, Xiao Chun naturally wouldn't kill him. The battle continued. As time passed, Sha Mo Cheng found it more and more difficult to resist. Every single strike of Xiao Chen's seemed very ordinary, but it was rather strenuous for Sha Mo Cheng to deal with the lightning speed and enormous strength. It was naturally impossible for Xiao Chen to remain in the same spot for 8 years. It could be said that these 8 years of bloody battle had allowed Xiao Chen to grow a lot. Other than the fact that his cultivation remained the same, Xiao Chen had improved a lot in all other aspects compared to 8 years ago. Xiao Chen's comprehension of the laws of strength and the laws of speed was much deeper than 8 years ago. On the other hand, Xiao Chen's comprehension of the tempered battle body and various other martial skills had improved greatly as well. Xiao Chen had even been suppressing his own cultivation. Otherwise, Xiao Chen would have probably reached the Tao Emperor realm by now. The reason he'd been suppressing his cultivation was entirely because Xiao Chen's speed of improvement had been too fast, and it had damaged his foundation. So, Xiao Chen couldn't break through so quickly in the following days. He had to progress steadily and surely. It was exactly for the sake of his foundation that Xiao Chen had been suppressing his cultivation and hadn't broken through for 8 years. But even then, Xiao Chen's strength had indeed reached the level of a holy sun after 8 years. Xiao Chen didn't fear the other holy sons of the human race at all. At the very least, Xiao Chen could defeat Hu Fei, Jiang Yu, and the others. He could even fight Emperor Qing and Xiao Chen. If there was anyone that Xiao Chen wasn't confident in, then it would be Chun Yu. Chun Yu might seem lazy, but Xiao Chen had fought him in the past. In the end, Xiao Chen had lost, and Chun Yu didn't even know if Chun Yu had used his full strength. It could be said that Xiao Chen truly possessed the strength of a holy sun. Moreover, Xiao Chen's strength was rather high amongst the holy sons of the human race. Apart from a very small number of holy sons like Chun Yu, Xiao Chen couldn't guarantee victory against the other holy sons, but he could at least guarantee that he wouldn't be at a disadvantage. It had undergone a complete metamorphosis, so Samakin had no chance of winning in Xiao Chen's hands. After fighting with Sha Moqing for about 15 minutes, Xiao Chen stabbed out with his sword and broke through all of Sha Moqing's defenses. Then, the inky dragon sword stopped in front of Sha Moqing's eyes. It only needed to move a little bit more, and it would pierce through Sha Moqing's throat. Victory was decided with a single strike. In response, Xiao Chen smiled. "How is it? Do you want to continue? No wonder Fourth Brother's praise for you is fake. You really do live up to your reputation as the most talented holy son of the human race." Sha Moqing didn't feel the slightest shame from his defeat and spoke very calmly. He didn't care too much about the outcome of this battle. Just as Sha Moqing finished speaking, a figure slowly appeared beside him. It was Sha Mo. He looked at Xiao Chen and smiled. "What, Xiao Chen? Are you bullying my third brother?" "Haha, it can't be considered bullying. Let's cut the crap. I've specially come to drink with you today. What, am I not welcome?" Xiao Chen sheathed his sword and laughed loudly. Xiao Chen had come to the demon camp to drink with him. Sha Moqing smiled. "Then let's go. It's rare for you to come here to find me. Please add me to your collection. Please recommend me." Chapter 920. No matter if it was Xiao Chen or Sha Mo, they had never personally visited each other's camp. Today, Xiao Chen had taken the initiative to look for him. Although Sha Mo did not say it clearly, he had already guessed that Xiao Chen's visit was not just for drinking wine. He quietly invited Xiao Chen into the demon camp. With regards to this, the surrounding demon race cultivators did not stop them. Firstly, this was Sha Mo's decision, and they did not dare to say anything. Secondly, Xiao Chen was only one person, and there was naturally nothing to worry about. Under Sha Mo's lead, the two of them arrived at his residence. It was a simple and crude tent. After entering, the two of them sat down in front of a wooden table. Soon after, Sha Mo took out the demon race's unique wine. Xiao Chun had already drunk quite a lot of the demon race's wine. Hence, he was naturally familiar with it. Without any hesitation, he opened a jar and poured it into his bowl. Then, he began to drink without caring about anything else. Seeing Xiao Chun being so self-aware, Sha Mo also smiled slightly. Soon after, he also poured a cup for himself and drank it in one gulp. The two of them sat opposite each other and drank to their heart's content. During the meal, Sha Mo also asked with a smile, "Xiao Chun, I'm afraid that you did not come to look for me today, just to drink, right?" Sha Mo said. Hearing this, Xiao Chun smiled and replied, "Let's not talk about this first. Let's drink first." He did not directly answer Sha Mo's question. Hearing this, Sha Mo also did not continue to ask. The two of them ate and drank heartily. After they were full, Xiao Chun let out a breath of turbid air. Then, he asked Sha Mo in a seemingly casual manner, "Sha Mo, it has been 8 years since we fought, right?" "Yes, it has indeed been 8 years." Hearing this, Sha Mo nodded and replied. Seeing this, Xiao Chun said, "If we continue to fight, what do you think will be the outcome for both of us? We will both perish together." Although Sha Mo did not know what Xiao Chun meant by these words, he still chose to answer truthfully. Indeed, if they continued to fight, both sides would perish together. Seeing that Sha Mo he had also realized this problem, Xiao Chun revealed a faint smile on his face. He immediately straightened his body, and the expression on his face became serious as he spoke. "If we continue to fight, our two races will only end in mutual destruction. Sha Mo, have you ever thought that with the current situation, the war should be over?" Hearing this, Sha Mo looked at Xiao Chun with a deep meaning in his eyes. After saying so much, Sha Mo had naturally guessed a little. After being quiet for a while, Sha Mo opened his mouth and said, "You want peace talks?" He had already guessed Xiao Chun's thoughts. Regarding this, Xiao Chun did not conceal anything and nodded. Seeing this, Sha Mo did not say anything. However, in his heart, he had to admit that Xiao Chun's words had struck his heart. That's right, Sha Mo actually also had thoughts of peace talks. However, the situation of the demon race did not allow for peace talks. Sha Mo took a deep breath and said somewhat helplessly, "Xiao Chun, I know what you mean. However, you should also understand that there is no possibility of peace talks in the demon race, because we will not retreat. Retreat is equivalent to death." After 8 years of being together, the two of them were both enemies and friends. Therefore, when they spoke at this time, they appeared to be very frank. Sha Mo also told Xiao Chun the situation of the demon race without holding anything back. Xiao Chun already knew about the situation of the demon race. Therefore, when he heard this, he was not surprised at all. "I know. That's why we need peace talks. Your demon race only needs a bridge to communicate with the outside world. The demon race only needs a bridge to communicate with the outside world." Xiao Chun's words could be said to have hit the nail on the head. Hearing this, Sha Mo's expression changed. Then, his voice trembled as he looked at Xiao Chun. "Xiao Chun, what do you mean by that?" After hearing Xiao Chun's words, Sha Mo was very excited. After all, if there was a way, why would the demon race be willing to fight to the death with the human race? Seeing how excited Sha Mo was, Xiao Chun smiled and said, "It's very simple. Our human race can provide you with such a bridge. I think this should be able to facilitate our peace talks. Of course, the specific matters still need to be decided by the ancestors themselves. Today, I'm just here to convey this message to the ancestors of the demon race and see what your demon race thinks." The human race could provide the demon race with a bridge to communicate with the outside world. This was the basis of peace talks. Sha Mo was stunned. He didn't expect Xiao Chun to actually come here today to discuss this matter. Peace talks were also the best outcome for the demon race. As expected, after coming back to his senses, Sha Mo was very excited. He looked at Xiao Chun expectantly and said, "Xiao Chun, is what you said true? Are the human race really willing to provide us with a bridge?" "Of course. If not, how can we talk about peace talks?" Xiao Chun replied with a smile. Okay. Xiao Chun, wait for me here for a moment. I'll tell the ancestors now. Don't leave. The ancestors might summon you later." After hearing Xiao Qin's affirmative answer, Sha Mo chose to tell Xia Yelu immediately and told Xiao Qin not to leave in a hurry. Xiao Qin could understand Sha Mo's excitement. After all, after 8 years of fierce war, not only the human race, but the demon race was also at the end of their rope. Like the human race, the demon race actually wanted to end the war long ago. Unfortunately, they had no choice. Now, Xiao Qin's arrival gave both sides such an opportunity. It was normal for Sha Mo to be excited. After saying that, Sha Mo asked Xiao Qin to wait in his residence while he hurried to meet Xia Yelu. Of course, before leaving, Sha Mo also instructed the surrounding demon race cultivators to treat Xiao Qin well and satisfy all of Xiao Qin's requests as much as possible. After settling Xiao Qin down, Sha Mo went directly to Xia Yelu's residence without any delay. He didn't need to report and directly entered Xia Yelu's tent. Xia Yelu asked curiously when he saw how excited Sha Mo was. "What's the matter? What can make you so flustered?" Xia Yelu knew Sha Mo very well. Ordinary matters wouldn't make Sha Mo so flustered. In response to Xia Yelu's question, Sha Mo sat down in front of him and didn't beat around the bush as he spoke directly. "Ancestor, Xiao Qin came to see me." "Oh, Xiao Qin of the human race? He came to the camp of the demon race." "Yes, he's in my residence now." "Then why didn't you entertain him? Why did you come here?" Xia Yelu asked. "Xiao Qin came here to negotiate." Although he didn't say it explicitly, I guess that this matter must have been instructed by the ancestor of the human race, Sha Mo said. Xiao Qin came here to negotiate. Hearing Sha Mo's words, Xia Yelu was stunned at first. Then, a touch of excitement flashed in his eyes, but it soon dimmed again. Begging for collection, begging for monthly votes, begging for recommendations. Chapter 921. The human race's proposal for peace talks was indeed good news for the demon race. After all, the demon race did not want to continue fighting. Therefore, after hearing Shamohi's words, Xia Yelu's first feeling was excitement and anticipation, but soon he dimmed again. He really wanted to negotiate, but so what? Was it possible for the demon race to negotiate? No, because it was impossible for the demon race to retreat. As if seeing through Xia Yelu's thoughts, Shamohi continued, "Patriarch, Xiao Qin said that the human race is willing to give us a bridge to connect to the outside world, and this is also the basis of the peace talks. Now is obviously not the time to keep people in suspense." So after seeing Xia Yelu's gloominess, Shamohi said directly. Hearing this, even Xia Yelu could not remain calm. What did the human race mean? They were willing to give the demon race a bridge to connect to the outside world. In this way, it was equivalent to giving the demon race of the northern demon continent a chance to live. If that was the case, then the demon race and the human race would indeed have the possibility of peace talks. The flame that had been extinguished in his heart burned again. If this was a successful peace talk, Xia Yelu would naturally raise both hands in agreement. After taking a deep breath and trying to calm himself down, Xia Yelu looked at Shamohi and asked, "Did Xiao Qin say how the human race plans to give us this bridge?" "No, he only said that these things can only be decided by the patriarchs of both sides. However, since both sides have this intention, I think we should give it a try. After all, we can't afford to fight," Shamohi said. Xiao Qin knew the real thoughts of Xiao Sheng and the other patriarchs. They wanted to give the half of the Sacredine Prefecture near the Blood Gate to the demon race, but Xiao Qin did not tell Shamohi about this. After all, negotiations required bargaining chips, and the bargaining chips were obviously revealed at the most critical moment for the best effect. Therefore, Xiao Qin did not tell Shamohi about this. After all, the purpose of Xiao Qin's trip was only to build a possibility of peace talks between both sides. As for how the talks would end and whether they would succeed or not, that was the matter of the patriarchs of both sides. It had nothing to do with Xiao Qin. Of course, Xiao Qin could not make the decision. He still didn't know what the human race was planning, but the fact that they could negotiate was good news for both sides. No matter what the result was, he believed that it was worth a try. Therefore, After hearing Sha Mo's words, Sha Yelu pondered for a moment and then said, "Go and invite Xiao Chen over. I want to talk to him face to face." As expected, Sha Yelu wanted to meet Xiao Chen in person. Hearing this, Sha Yelu nodded and walked out of the tent. When he returned to his residence, he told Xiao Chen that Sha Yelu wanted to talk to him personally. Xiao Chen did not refuse and followed Sha Mo to Sha Yelu's tent. This wasn't the first time Xiao Chen had met Sha Yelu, but he had only seen him from afar on the battlefield. Now that he was face to face with the strongest ancestor of the demon race, Xiao Chen cupped his hands and bowed in a neither servile nor overbearing manner. Xiao Chen greets the demon race ancestor. Facing Sha Yelu, Xiao Chen did not show the slightest nervousness. Seeing this, Sha Yelu nodded slightly and couldn't help but think highly of Xiao Chen in his heart. As expected of the most talented holy son of the human race who was on par with Sha Mo, his bearing alone was extremely extraordinary. He gestured for Xiao Chen to sit down. Seeing this, Xiao Chen did not refuse and sat cross-legged opposite Sha Yelu. Sha Mo also sat down beside Xiao Chen. After the two of them sat down, Sha Yelu also spoke bluntly. "I heard that the human race ancestor intends to negotiate. Is that true?" "Yes, but I'm afraid you've misunderstood, Patriarch Sha Yelu. It's not our intention to negotiate, but the situation is forcing us to do so. I believe that the situation of the demon race is not much better than that of the human race." Xiao Chen nodded in response, but added another sentence after the battle. The human race did not intend to negotiate, but they had no choice. Both races needed to end the war. This was Xiao Chen's idea. The human race did not want to negotiate because they were afraid of the demon race, but because they did not want both sides to suffer and perish together. Understanding the meaning of Xiao Chen's words, Sha Yelu smiled slightly and thought to himself, "He's really a little guy who doesn't want to suffer losses." However, this is indeed the truth. The human race did not intend to show weakness, but it was forced by the situation. In this peace talk, both sides had to show their attitudes first. It wasn't because one side showed weakness that they were negotiating. In fact, both sides were still on the same level. There was no saying that one side was stronger or weaker. Therefore, this peace talk had to be fair. Only in this way could there be a possibility of success. He did not mind Xiao Chen's words. Although these words were a little disrespectful to Sha Yelu did not care about this little bit of face now. He still said calmly, "I wonder how the human race ancestor intends to negotiate? I think you should also know where the bottom line of the demon race is." "Of course, but I don't know what the great ancestors are thinking. I'm only here to create a possibility for the peace talks between the two sides. As for how the talks will go and what the outcome will be, I think it's up to the great ancestors of both sides," Xiao Chen replied. After hearing this, Sha Yelu nodded slightly and said, "That's true." "Well, Xiao Chen, you can go back first. I'll discuss with the other two ancestors of the demon race and send Sha Mo to the camp of the human race in a few days." Sha Yelu was definitely inclined to the peace negotiation. However, there were two other ancestors of the demon race, so Sha Yelu could not agree directly. In this regard, Xiao Chen also expressed his understanding and nodded. After chatting casually for a while, Xiao Chen chose to leave. He had already told Sha Yelu about the peace negotiation, and it seemed that Sha Yelu had agreed. As for the other two ancestors of the demon race, Xiao Chen was not worried, because the peace negotiation was not only for the human race, but also for the demon race. After staying in the camp of the demon race for a night, it was not until Xiao Chen returned safely to the camp of the human race the next day that Qin Shu and the other two women were completely relieved. The three women did not care about the peace negotiation. In their hearts, Xiao Chen's safety was the most important thing. As for other things, they could ignore them. After returning safely, the three women were relieved. Xiao Chen also immediately told the result of this trip to Xiao Sheng. After hearing Xiao Chen's words, Xiao Sheng was not worried about the decision of the demon race. Instead, he said with a smile, "You've worked hard. Kid, you've worked hard this time. Take a rest. I believe you'll be busy soon. The demon race would not refuse the peace negotiation. As such, the next meeting was between the ancestors of both sides. After hearing Xiao Sheng's words, Xiao Chen nodded and returned to his residence. At the same time, the three ancestors of the demon race, Sha Yilu, and the other two ancestors of the demon race also gathered to discuss the peace negotiation. Please collect, vote, recommend. Chapter 922. Just as Xiao Chun and Xiao Sheng had thought, the demon race did not reject the peace talks. They had no reason to do so. Merely 2 days later, Sha Mo arrived at the human race's main camp. Xiao Chun naturally received him personally. Without wasting any time, Sha Mo directly stated the purpose of his visit. The three ancestors of the demon race had all agreed to the peace talks. This time, he was specially sent to set the time and place of the peace talks with the human race. The demon race had agreed to the peace talks. Hearing Sha Mo's words, Xiao Chun smiled slightly. After that, the two of them went to meet with Xiao Sheng. Perhaps to express their sincerity, the human race decided on the time and place of the peace talks. Of course, the place naturally could not be set in the human race's territory. The ancestors of the demon race were not fools. They would not easily enter the human race's main camp. The location of the peace talks had to be safe for both sides. Otherwise, it would obviously not work. Regarding this, Xiao Sheng had already thought about it. He set the location of the peace talks at the battlefield on the eastern plains of the Sacredine Prefecture. Located in the middle of the camps of the two clans, it was obviously the best place to negotiate. Firstly, neither side had entered the other's territory. Secondly, this place was very close to the camps of both clans. If there was any danger, both sides could react immediately. Sha Mo did not have any objections to setting the location of the peace talks at the battlefield on the eastern plains. The time was set to be 3 days later. After setting the time and place for the peace talks, Sha Mo stayed in the human race's main camp for a night. Early the next morning, he left and returned to the demon race's main camp. After 8 years of fierce war, the news of the ancestors of both sides negotiating for peace spread like wildfire. However, regardless of whether it was the human race or the demon race, no one clearly expressed their opposition to it. After all, the war had already lasted for 8 years. Both races had already paid a heavy price for it. Now that they finally saw the hope of ending the war, only an idiot would speak out against it. Those who had never experienced the flames of war would never know how hard it was to achieve peace. Therefore, the cultivators of the two races were very supportive of the peace talks between the old ancestors of the two races. Even the belligerent demon race was surprisingly quiet at this time. 3 days passed in the blink of an eye. When the appointed day arrived, a sturdy wooden palace had already been built in the middle of the battlefield between the two camps early in the morning. The palace was simple and crude, and the area was not large. At the same time, the ancestors of both sides flew out and appeared in front of the palace. None of them brought any attendants with them. On the human side, there was Xiao Sheng, Randang Cozy Eye, Prime Saint Ice Lotus, and Prime Saint Mingjia. On the demon side, there were 3 patriarchs. A total of 7 people met in front of the main hall. Without saying much, both sides entered the main hall one after another, and the doors closed tightly. The peace talk was the business of the ancestors. Obviously, others couldn't interfere with it. However, with the start of the peace talk, both human camp and demon camp had made preparations secretly. As long as there was any problem in the process of the peace talk, both parties could respond to it as soon as possible. The armies of both races were secretly on guard. In the wooden palace, Shailu, Xiao Sheng, and the other patriarchs of the two races were also sitting facing each other. They were less than 5 meters apart. Their eyes met, and Xiao Sheng was the first to speak. Shailu, after 8 years of fierce war, our two races are evenly matched. I hope there will be a good outcome for today's peace talks. Of course, but you should also know what the demon race wants. If you can't give it to us, we won't agree. Upon hearing Xiao Sheng's words, Shailu replied, Xiao Sheng was naturally very clear about what the demon race wanted. Besides Xiao Chun, Randa and Cozy Eye and the others were also very clear about this. The peace talks officially began. No one knew what the patriarchs of the two races were talking about in the main hall. In the human race camp, Xiao Chun, Chun Ling, Long Qing, Chun Yu, Emperor Qing, and Qin Shuru were sitting together. They were all waiting for the results of the peace talks. At this moment, Hu Fei asked curiously, "Do you think the peace talks will be successful this time?" He was curious and worried about the results of the peace talks. After all, if the peace talks failed, the two races would probably perish together. This was an outcome that no one wanted to see. Upon hearing Hu Fei's words, Xiao Chun took a sip of tea and said, "Don't worry, there won't be a problem." Unlike Hu Fei's worries, Xiao Chun was very optimistic about this peace talks. The two races would definitely reach a consensus because the human race's conditions were already something that the demon race couldn't refuse. Xiao Chun knew the bottom line of the patriarchs and knew the inside story of the peace talks in detail. Therefore, Xiao Chun was very confident about this peace talks. Seeing Xiao Chun's confident reply, Hu Fei looked at him in surprise and didn't say anything. Instead, it was Jiang Yu who spoke. "Xiao Chun, after this war, are you going to leave the Tiana continent?" "Yes, I'm going to leave." Hearing this, Xiao Chun didn't hide anything and said bluntly. Xiao Chun and the others came from the Tianshan continent. This was no longer a secret. In the past 8 years, almost everyone knew that Xiao Chun, Pill Cloud Saint, Nine Heaven Saint, and the others came from the Tianshan continent. Not only did they know that they came from the Tianshan continent, but they also knew why Xiao Chun and the others came to the Tiana continent. They knew that Xiao Chun and the others came to the Tiana continent to improve, to protect the Tianshan continent, and to resist the invasion of the demonic cultivators. In fact, these weren't shameful things, so it didn't matter if they said it. The reason why they didn't say it before was because they didn't know how the Tiana continent was perceived by outsiders. But now, Xiao Chun and the others could be said to have integrated into the Tiana continent, so these secrets naturally couldn't be regarded as secrets anymore. Seeing Xiao Chun nod in agreement, Qing Emperor, who had been silent all this time, said faintly, "Xiao Chun, when you return to the Tianshan continent, I'll go with you. I'm a little tired of staying in the Tiana continent. It's a good opportunity to go out and gain experience." Qing Emperor took the initiative to ask to go to the Tianshan continent with Xiao Chun. As soon as his words came out, it instantly resonated with Hu Fei and Jiang Yu. Even Chun Yu expressed that he wanted to go to the Tianshan continent with him. Everyone was a saint, so naturally they wanted to see the vastness of this world. Xiao Chun didn't refuse their request. If they wanted to go, then they could go together. To put it bluntly, taking them with him would increase his strength. When the time comes, they would have a greater chance of winning against the demonic cultivators. Of course now, whether it was Xiao Chun or Pill Cloud Saint, they didn't have much fear of the demonic cultivators. There was no other way. They had fought fiercely with the demon race for 8 years. How could they be afraid of the demonic cultivators? Begging for collection, begging for monthly votes, begging for recommendation. Chapter 923. Demonic cultivators were actually a group of slaves of the demon race. They regarded the demon race as their masters and wanted to obtain the powerful strength of the demon race. Now, Xiao Chun and the others were not even afraid of the real demon race. Why would they be afraid of demonic cultivators? It was simply a joke. After chatting for a while, everyone decided that if the war really ended, they would go to the heavenly Chun continent together. In fact, Chun Yu, Emperor Qing, and the others were also very curious about the outside world. After all, they had never left the heavenly river continent. Naturally, they wanted to see Xiao Chen's hometown and see what the heavenly Qin continent was like. Sooner or later, eagles would spread their wings and soar. After experiencing this bloody battle with the demon race, everyone had matured a lot and understood that they were weak. At the same time, they also had an endless yearning for the outside world. In fact, even if they did not go to the heavenly Chun continent with Shao Chun, they still planned to go out and gain strength in the future. Everyone present was a holy son. Naturally, they could not be losers on a continent. They could not become real powerhouses by working behind closed doors. Everyone chatted while paying attention to the situation in the hall in the distance. However, judging from the current situation, the peace talks should still be continuing. Shao Chun had never experienced such a negotiation before. However, he could guess that it would be difficult for the two sides to end it in a short period of time. After all, this kind of negotiation was not like buying vegetables. Both sides had a fixed price. Since the interests of the two races were involved, the negotiation would naturally be a back-and-forth negotiation. Although the great ancestors of the two races must have a bottom line in their hearts, it was naturally impossible for them to reveal it so easily. Who did not want to fight for more benefits for their race? Therefore, at the beginning, both sides would definitely set a high price. Then, they would slowly bargain until they found a point that both sides could agree on. Only then would the peace talks be successful. It could be imagined that Shao Sheng and the others must be fighting with Xia Yelu and the others. This was indeed the case. Although Shao Sheng and the others already had a bottom line in their hearts, just as Shao Chun thought, Shao Chun naturally would not reveal his trump card at the beginning. Therefore, at this time, the ancestors of the two races were constantly bargaining with each other in order to gain more benefits for themselves. And in this back-and-forth bargaining, time passed slowly. Soon, a day had passed. A day had passed since the old ancestors of the two clans entered the hall. From the outside, the entire hall seemed very calm, without the slightest abnormality. However, a whole day had passed, and the old ancestors still hadn't come to a conclusion, which made the warriors of the two clans a little worried. Compared to the others who were worried, Shao Chun appeared to be very calm. It had only been a day, so there was no need to worry. One had to know that this peace talk was not just limited to the war. More importantly, it was about how the two races would coexist in the future. Humans and demons lived together, which naturally needed to be paid attention to. Therefore, in addition to ending the war, it was more important to settle various matters regarding the coexistence of the two races in the future. At least, they had to ensure that such a war would not happen again. It was obviously not an easy task to finalize the various matters of the two races living together. It was very complicated. Various situations had to be considered. Moreover, a relatively fair and feasible rule had to be formulated to restrain the cultivators of the two races. Shao Chun knew that it would take at least 3 to 5 days. Therefore, in the end, Shao Chun did not bother to wait outside the camp. Instead, he directly returned to his residence. Just as Shao Chun had guessed, this peace talk lasted for a total of 6 days. It was not until the morning of the 7th day that the door of the hall opened again. Then, the ancestors of the two sides slowly walked out of the hall. After 6 days, when they reappeared in front of the two races, everyone noticed that the ancestors of the two races were smiling. Obviously, they were in a good mood. In this way, it meant that this peace talk should be successful. Although there were inevitably some details that had not been agreed upon, the ancestors of the two races had reached a consensus on the general direction. This was enough. After all, this peace talk was only to lay a foundation for the coexistence of the two races in the future. As for the other matters, they definitely needed to be discussed and perfected. After leaving the hall, Shao Sheng's group of 4 bid farewell to Xia Yelu and the other 2 ancestors of the demon clan in their hearts. Then, they returned to their own camps. The peace talk ended. On the same day, the ancestors of the two races issued the order to end the war. The demon clan also consciously removed the periphery of the Blood Gate. For a time, the originally tense situation quickly eased. This made the cultivators of the two races overjoyed. According to the agreement between the two sides, in the future, the 5,000 miles around the Blood Gate in the Holy province would belong to the demon clan, and the rest would belong to the human clan. Originally, they had planned to give half of the Holy province to the demon clan, but now, only 1/3 of it was given. This result was obviously beyond the human clan's expectations. Therefore, Xiao Sheng and the other ancestors readily agreed. For the demon clan, 1/3 of the Holy Yin province's territory was already enough. After all, the demon clan did not need to live in the Heavenly River continent. They could also live in the northern demon continent. As for the 1/3 of the Holy Yin province's territory, its only function was to be a bridge between the northern demon continent and the outside world. Therefore, the size of the territory was not important to the demon clan. After 8 years, after both sides paid a heavy price, the peace talks were successful and the war ended. In the next half a month, the demon clan's army quickly returned to the northern demon continent through the Blood Gate, leaving only 10,000 cultivators to guard the Heavenly River continent. At the same time as the demon clan retreated, the human clan did the same. Most of the troops retreated to the other 3 provinces in batches. In the Holy Yin province, the human clan also left only 50,000 cultivators to guard it. Both sides began to withdraw their troops at the same time. Then, in order to show that both sides were willing to coexist peacefully, the 2 races also agreed to hold a banquet in the ancient sacred sect. At that time, the 3 ancestors of the demon clan, as well as the saints, Sha Mo, and the other demon princes, would all participate. Of course, the saints of the human clan, as well as Shao Chun and the other holy sons and holy daughters of the human clan, would also participate. It could be considered the first gathering of the core figures of the 2 races. Xiao Sheng and the others were not worried about inviting the core figures of the demon clan to the ancient sacred sect. The war had just ended, and the demon clan would not start another war at this time. Moreover, it was even more unlikely that the demon clan would not covet the prosperity of the ancient sacred sect. Because of the cultural differences between the 2 races, prosperity in the eyes of the human clan might not mean much in the eyes of the demon clan. Therefore, it was impossible for the demon clan to harbor evil intentions because of the prosperity of the ancient sacred sect. Begging for collection, begging for monthly votes, begging for recommendations. End of chapter. That you're tuning in to the Warrior Lore YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.